We have a great program lined up today to learn how we can manage these changes. A quick note, it's not just counties that are facing workforce issues. I will tell you, all my small businesses, I've never seen so many help wanted signs out in storefronts. I don't recall that even as I was growing up. It's a pleasure to be here with you in beautiful San Luis Obispo County, and it is beautiful. I so enjoyed coming here. I want you to know that it took me 2 days to get here. I did the trip, and so I've seen a lot of beauty. San Luis Obispo is at the top of the list there. A few housekeeping items to start. Please, please, please silence your phones so we can stay focused here. And now it's my honor to introduce your host, Supervisor, CSAC, Second Vice President. What's your name again? Bruce Gibson.
You know, I don't know what big deal Ed makes about getting here. You know, the train will drop you off right here. You can get there from Sacramento. You just have to get up at midnight to get on it. It's a piece of cake. You know, or you can fly, which, you know, First Vice President Washington has the right idea, unless there's fog. You know, it's a little bit of everything here. You know, it was interesting at the dinner last night. I was talking to folks, and a remarkable number of people said, I've never been here before, you know, and others had indicated, well, they'd been here, but only driving through on the 101. But everybody I talked to did make mention of the challenge that it takes to get here. For being so nominally centrally located, it takes a little bit of effort. And, you know, some would see that perhaps as an exclusionary tactic. You know, we just don't want the masses coming here. But I look at it a little differently. The effort that you have put in, whether you've driven or taken the train or flown, entitles you to a reward of enjoying this remarkable spot. Effort invested, and now you get to savor the reward. We are quite proud of our county. It is full of special places, and you're sitting in the middle of one. This is the Monday Club, a civic organization. This is their clubhouse. This is a civic organization that was founded in the mid-20s to do a wide variety of benefits. This clubhouse was constructed in 1933 and 1934, designed by Julia Morgan. And if that name rings a bell, Julia actually did some work on a little vacation pad up the coast away that's called Hearst Castle. So we have been blessed with the remarkable sense, and the interior of this room always feels very much like San Luis Obispo. It has that rhythm. You know, besides special places, there's more to it. I think it's really more like a point of view or a way of life. We are incredibly blessed to live amongst the bounty of agriculture here in San Luis County. You know, we're a mid-sized county, 282,000 people or so. Agriculture and visitor serving are our two pillars of our economy. And agriculture is so strong here, you know, that I'm sure that we could feed ourselves. You know, if we had to close the borders, which I'm not advocating, we could feed ourselves. Top crop is strawberries. The second biggest one is wine grapes. And in the top 5, some places, broccoli. So we could live happy and healthy for a very long time. But, you know, I want you, as you stay here, you know, as you're here today on a break, you might just stand roughly where the projector is and look out that door to see very much the natural beauty of this place. That way of life is reflected in our visitor serving marketing organization. Is called Visit Slow Cal, S-L-O Cal. You'll hear slow, as I'm sure you said. And that really speaks to it, is take time to just enjoy life, take time to think, and I think that's appropriate for the job we have in front of us today. You know, we are here to talk about workforce development, something I know is on all our minds, and as a county supervisor, I've come in recent years fond of saying that, you know, literally the only thing that county supervisors ever do is talk about doing things. It is our county staff who actually do the things that we want to do on behalf of the residents and of our communities. And as we face this rather uncertain future, securing a quality, engaged, excited, committed, devoted workforce is becoming ever more challenging. And I'm looking forward today to hearing some of the ideas, some of those who are thinking about this and seeing how we can achieve what we really set out to do on our mission of serving our residents. So again, I'm more than excited to have you all here. I would introduce one of my colleagues who is here, Supervisor Don Ortiz-Legg, came in just as I started talking here. Don, I would be happy to hand you the microphone for comments. As you know, as we say, don't want to put you on the spot, but we live on the spot. So that's how we roll. And so with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the California State Association of Counties, Mr. Graham Knaus.
Thank you, Mr. Second Vice President. What a marvelous day to be in SLO, right? It's been a really long time since we've had the opportunity to really do this kind of gathering where we're focused on one specific issue area. We're diving in a little bit deeper. We're connecting with each other. We get to learn and spend some time together throughout the day. We get to have some dialogue, and that's really what today's about. So, good morning. Yes. Always start with the high energy. We'll keep it as we move through the day. Hope you're well rested, or at least caffeinated if you are not well rested. One of the two, it goes back and forth. I think Mr. Second Vice President said it well, talking about service and finding ways to give back to your community, but also highlighting the importance of self-care in that. And those two things are going to be highly relevant, I think, as we move through today's agenda related to workforce-related issues. CSAC is really fortunate in representing every single county, every single supervisor, and really the whole county family across the state. And it's moments like this where we really get to dive deeper. This is not a policy creation meeting, but it's very well something that may come out and impact our policy development process. And it may impact how counties lead and implement at the local level. And that's really what these regional meetings are all about. Before I jump in any further, I do want to give a very special recognition to a few folks. We are here today because of the leadership and great work of Ms. Chastity Benson. That's right. Manuel Rivas, who's our Deputy Executive Director of Operations and Member Services as well. Chastity, I didn't point out your title because it's sort of all things, but she runs our California Counties Foundation. We're able to do regional meetings. We're able to do the meal we had last night because we have a great partnership with our CSAC Finance Corporation, which is run by Alan Fernandez, who's in the house, and Mr. Jim Minker, who connects up with our corporate partners. Yes. Okay, so the world, we all know the world has changed dramatically over the past couple of years. And today we're going to dive into that in a way to better understand what some of those changes are and to try to better equip ourselves with how to navigate forward in an environment that is filled with chaos and it feels like instability and constant change, which seems to be getting faster and faster and faster. And so that's true with things such as remote work, hybrid schedules, changing demands of the workforce, and we're going to really work that through. So we have one central question that we're going to keep in mind as we're moving through this meeting. How can counties find that sweet spot and develop a fully staffed organization that offers flexibility, manageable workloads, and excels at delivering services to its constituents? Easy, right? Well, perhaps not so. And so we're going to begin today's conversation with our keynote speaker, who is Miss Deanna Potter. Ms. Potter is a strategic communications manager with the Center for Organizational Effectiveness in San Diego, and she's going to really set the stage. She's going to drop some truth. She's going to set the stage for the rest of today's program, talking about insights on the future of a hybrid workplace. And we know it's a moving target, but that's why we bring folks with the expertise and the passion like Ms. Potter has. And so I want to thank you, Ms. Potter, and invite you up here to drop your knowledge on this esteemed group of county leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Potter. You want to take it down there?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Graham. I very much appreciate the introduction. And I know a few people in the room, and if you know me, I can't stay on that stage. I just can't do it. I'm like a little hamster in a cage. So I'm going to be down here with you guys. Is that okay? Awesome. I want to drop a little history knowledge on top of what Bruce said. During the early 20s and early 30s, when Julia Morgan was helping with the design of this house, the ladies of that organization used to give her free room and board in their own homes in exchange for her commission work on the building of this home, on this establishment. So it was kind of cool. She would come down to do work at Hearst Castle, and she would stay with the ladies in their home while she was doing it. I thought that was very cool. Yeah. So I am thrilled to be here this morning. I have hours and hours and days of information and knowledge to share with you in the next 45 minutes. So buckle up and get ready. I'm going to ask you guys, very much like Miles here is doing, have your books open, have a pen ready. As we work through the next 45 minutes, there will be moments where I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to get a minute or two to write down some thoughtful reflection around some of the information that we're going to have here. Okay. I also want to let you know that along the way, we're going to have some moments where some of you are really going to like me and I'm going to make some friends, and some of you are not going to like me. And I'm okay with that. I can take it, all right? I was talking with Graham and he said, so you're going to bring some knowledge? I said, I'm going to bring some truth. All right? And let me tell you what I know to be true. Is that there is no one in this world today that can claim to be an expert on workplace hybrid best practices. Exactly what each and every one of you should be doing, because we are at a time that we have never been at before. There are people out there, and I'm going to be citing the research and telling you who they are, who have been studying this for decades. They can give you indications of what has happened in the 80s and in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and even recent information that has occurred in the last couple of years. But nobody can tell you right now and in the future what exactly is the best thing or what's about to happen. Does this make sense? Okay. So that is one of the reasons why when I was asked to come here, I'm like, I can't tell you guys exactly what is going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. No one does. That's why we're going to start with what do we know, what is needed, and what is still to come. Okay? But let's start with this understanding. We are at a time right now of uncharted territory. Does that make sense? Everybody agree with that? Uncharted territory means you need to be brave, and you're going to be somewhat nervous. What are some of the emotions that we feel? Yell them out. What are they? Anxious. What else? Unsure. What else? Frustrated. What's the next level from frustrated? Oh, that's way up there. Who do I have over here? Aticia? Aticia. I like you, Aticia. Yeah. I was just looking for like angry, but yes. There we go. Yeah. What was that? Okay, what else? I mean, sometimes it can be a little what? Well, okay, untrustworthy. What was that? Stressful. Okay, I was hoping the other side of the coin. Anything like, thank you. And what's your name? Stephanie. There we go. A little bit of, what else? What did you say? She said excited. Yeah. Opportunity. Daniel, how's it going? Good to see you. Opportunity, yes. All right. Some of the most brave people with vision who were up for the adventure, they gave us things like this, right? Yeah. I got to actually see Neil Armstrong in his first interview after, I think it was 18 years. He'd gone into hiding. You could not find anything anywhere. Not an interview, not a recording, nothing. And I got to see him on a stage in Las Vegas in 2004, I believe it was. It was remarkable. The interviewer said to him, when you today look up at the moon after what you've been through, what do you think of? And his answer was, girls. It was the best interview ever, really. Yeah. How about this? You know who those people are? Right, Wright brothers. Like aviation. I would like to say, for those of you who feel frustrated trying to get into slow, not me, Alaska brought back the one flight nonstop from San Diego. Oh, I'm so grateful. It's the best thing in the world. Parenthood. Is that uncharted territory? Right? A little bit of frustration, anxiousness, and excitement all at the same time, right? Yeah. We can have some amazing things that come from uncharted territory. And there's another side to it. Challenger Space Shuttle, right? Boeing 737 MAX in 2018, and that baby grows up. Okay? This is all where we're at right now. So here's what I can tell you right now. Current studies show that at this point in the post-pandemic, wherever you want to call it, 50% of people in the United States can work from home and 50% cannot. Of the 50% that can work from home, a majority want to and will. Do you want to know why? Because if your organizations do not provide the opportunity for them to, they will find an organization that can. It's as simple as that. And we're about to hear from Keith and Yvonne and Tami all the statistics around supply and demand in the workforce. So if you are having problems acquiring good talent and you are having a difficulty keeping your people, this is why you should care. So if you're wondering, like, why should I care about this? This is why. If you want to manage better retention, have good talent acquisition, and really improve your employee engagement, this is why we're talking about this today. So, I love to talk to clients and work with clients, public sector, you name it, up and down the state of California, and we talk about what is the biggest challenge we're dealing with. I look at it as two parts. The logistics are hard. Agree? Shout out, what are some of the issues just logistically to try to manage a hybrid work environment? Quality internet. Thank you for talking about the IT. We're going to talk a lot about the IT. Kids at home. Great. For us as an organization, though, what is this logistical piece? Scheduling. Who's there? How do we provide good service still? The internet. Do they have the appropriate equipment at home, right? How about this whole fairness piece? Like, that department gets to do it. This department doesn't get to do it. They're on these days. We're on these hours. That's not fair. We're going to talk about that piece, right? Logistics are hard, but frankly, I'm going to tell you guys, that's not your hardest part. I would suggest you have all developed a muscle for that. You did it. You did it overnight. Like, you figured it out fast. You had to. I'm going to suggest the real challenge is the mindset of leaders. It is the mindset of leadership. When we all had to go there overnight, we just knew we had to, right? And we adapted and we did it. And that was hard, but we were all in it together. Now what we have, though, is this exhale. Well, we can go back now. And we have leaders at varying levels of organization saying, okay, the emergency is over, let's all go back. That is not going to work. It is not. And the issue is this. Some people in your levels of organization are smiling and following whatever the lead is in the messaging and saying, yep, I'm on board, but they're not. And frankly, you need to ask yourself, are you part of the solution or are you part of the problem? Right now, you guys are at the head of the reins. Because I'm telling you the statistics we're going to look at, I'm going to give you evidence that we have got to embrace some of the great things that were there, as I said, because otherwise this is contributing to all of these pieces around the Great Resignation that we're still seeing parts of. And I know we're going to talk about like what teams can and what teams can't. We're going to talk about the difference between your first responders and maybe your IT groups. Okay? And yet, I'm going to suggest that we consider, are there still elements, small elements of flexibility we can offer across the board? Shocking. Okay? So, mindset is where we're at. So I ask you, what biases maybe do you have? And we're going to talk about that, or exists in your organization. So we're going to do this, as I mentioned, from 3 standpoints. We're going to talk about what do we know, that's going to be the research. We're going to talk about what do we need, that's going to be in teams. And then we're going to talk about what is yet to come, and that's going to really be about the leadership piece, okay? So let's get into the research. There's a gentleman by the name of Nicholas Bloom. He is at Stanford, and he has been doing this for decades. He started in 2004, where he was diving into a variety of different countries and areas and companies to really take a look at what was happening in the blended hybrid workforce. So there were people that were doing this way before the pandemic. We just all started paying attention when it hit us, of course, right? 2010, he did a landmark study, and at that point in time, what he realized was that when you take a group of individuals randomly and you let them work from home, this is what you find out. They are 13% more productive, they take fewer and shorter breaks, and 50% less likely to quit. Pretty good, right? Then all of a sudden, March of 2020 hit. And the whole world became a research lab for Nick and colleagues of his throughout the world, right? And man, oh man, they started looking. They started to survey 5,000 Americans per month to see what was going on. And they kept going. And what they discovered was that people saw an increase in their positivity because there was flexibility in their lives. And although at first we were all kind of going, I'm going to be at home, like this is weird, 80% said it was actually better than they expected. Okay? More time. Check it out. When looking at individuals on an average day, what we've discovered is this. On a day in which a person works remotely from home, they are saving on average 70 minutes. And that's a combination of their commute time and what we call our prep time. Don't have to shave, not putting on quite as much makeup, putting that soft screen on, the Zoom or the Teams or the WebEx, right? Maybe not having to worry about what you're looking like from the waist down, got the flip-flops or the yoga pants on, I mean, let's be honest, right? 70 minutes. Now, when saving that 70 minutes, you in the organization get 30 minutes back. They're working an extra 30 minutes a day. Now, I am not in finance, but I can add 30 minutes times however many days, right? So, could get up to 2.5 hours a week, depending upon how available that individual is for the flexibility to work at home. That's golden. Especially because studies show, people say over and over again, working from home is less distracting. Any of you find that? Depending upon whether you got kids, I agree. Or dogs, or whatever it is. But overall, right? This was big. Big. I recommend a podcast by a gentleman by the name of Adam Grant. He actually did a podcast where he spoke to Nicholas Bloom. And at one point, he shares an audio tape from a high-level technical tech company CEO. He doesn't mention who he is, but he says you can drive down the freeway and see this company's advertisement signs all over the place. And the tech company CEO says, I do not agree with the fact that my manufacturing, my design people, certain departments work from home. I think they should be here full time. I want them present in the office. Nick then comes on and says, I'm baffled. I'm baffled. Because I have evidence right here, hard research studies, evidence that proves that doesn't work. It's like I just spoke to a flat earther, or somebody said Elvis is alive right there. It just doesn't compute based on what we know. Now, how many of you have heard rumblings or somebody has said, well, it's not fair, or we have to be fair? Anybody? Yep. Yeah. I get to see both sides of this coin because I have the wonderful opportunity to talk with leaders and work with clients at that level, and then I also get to do this stuff with different levels of organizations. So I get to talk to staff. And it's either, it's not fair, that department gets to and we don't, and we do similar functions, or when they don't really understand what that department does often. Or I have leaders say, we want just a blanket policy, that way nobody feels, slighted and so forth and so on. And I'm always fascinated because fairness, I think, is often misunderstood. Fairness is about meeting needs. I'm going to give you a very basic example. I toyed with giving this and I thought, I think it'll hit the mark. So statistics show right now that 3 out of 10 people in the United States are not on social media. I thought that was actually pretty generous. I thought it might be 1 out of 10. I am one of those 3, like no joke. My mother's making up the difference of time on social media, frankly. Like, she'll text me at 4 in the morning. I'm like, why are you up still? Oh, I haven't gone to sleep. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm parenting upward. So anyways, I got a TikTok video sent to me by someone, actually a client of mine, and it is a first grade teacher, and she had a group of her class students, and they were doing it's not fair, this isn't fair, that's not fair, and she sat them all down, and she said, Susie, we're going to pretend that you fell and you scuffed your knee. I'm going to give you a Band-Aid. I want you to put it on your knee. And then she turns to Julie and says, Julie, we're going to pretend that you fell and you scuffed your elbow. I'm going to give you a Band-Aid. I want you to put it on your knee. She goes to the third student and says, we're going to pretend that you fell and you scuffed your cheek. I'm going to give you a Band-Aid. I want you to put it on your knee. Now, these students started to get it, right? They asked, why? Because you want things to be fair and equal. Fair and equal does not mean that needs are being met. Yeah, I don't know about you, I'm a little older than a first grader, but it made sense to me. And I thought, I wonder if there are some adults I work with that this would work with. Or there's an analogy or connection here, right? Now, that's just the needs of, let's say, the staff, but what about the needs of the people we serve, right? That all mixes in here. The interdependence between the organization, the staff, and the community. Fairness is not about being equal. It's about looking at the needs, capabilities, and the function of what a person or team does. There's a big difference there. Is this making sense? So how do you communicate that? Well, let's find out. All right, first I want to talk about some silver linings. So some good things have come out of all of this, and I'm not going to do the, oh, look at, like, we've proven how, like, technology advancements and all that. That's a different conversation. What I want to talk about the fact that the organizations that are getting it have started to look at things as what we call a bottom-up style of management has emerged. Frankly, I could tell you a long list of organizations that I have worked with over the years where it was a little bit more of a, hey, this is what we need and this is good and let's do this. And then it was kind of communicated. And now there's a lot more of, I wonder what the staff are thinking. I wonder what the staff need. I wonder what they're experiencing. Honestly. How many of you have done some sort of a survey with your employees in the last year or two? Yeah. How many have you done more than you've done before the pandemic? Yeah. Yeah. Right? We're gathering input. We're going to the front lines. That's very different. Very different. And because of that, that's information we can't not know. It impacts our perception. It gives us information that influences our direction, our vision, and our movement. It also complicates things, let's be honest. I understand that. I totally get it, all right? So I ask you this. I want you to write down here for a moment. Is there an opportunity to connect with your staff to seek input, whether for the first time or going back? It is so important. We are not going to make a decision and it's going to be right the first time right now. Uncharted territory, right? We got to go back. We got to check in. What's working? What's not working? What needs to be different? Are there areas in your organization where leaders may have some biases around the hybrid approach? Let's be honest. I know. I talk to people at all levels. Frankly, so-and-so really wants everybody back. Knows that that can't happen. It's thank goodness is listening to us, or everybody would be a mass exodus. But really, that's what is wanted. And what side are you on? Are you part of the solution, part of the problem, kind of in the middle, like I'm doing it, but I just don't like it? Because that is also influencing you, and it's showing up in those closed-door meetings. And that's mixed messaging. It impacts your team, and it impacts the organization. So please take a moment. Okay. Interdependence in teams depends upon their function. So I want us to think about sports, okay? You may have a single individual function of a sport, like gymnastics, okay? If you have a team where it's like that, let's say a call center or like IT is usually a place like that, then you may have a higher likelihood of having more hybrid ability. When you have, like, I like to describe it as like a relay team, you're having to hand things off, project coordination, maybe building and planning. Anytime you're collaborating between departments, maybe HR and legal and another department need to come together, then you're going to be in that point being able to do some hybrid, but you're going to have some coordination. There's going to have to be collaborative days where people are coming together in person. That's going to be necessary, all right? And then you have these, finally, I'm going to call them true teams. I hate to call them that, but they're teams that have to be together on a much more frequent basis. So you're going to have things like maybe your healthcare teams. You're going to have your first responders, right? You're going to have people that are really having to collaborate and see each other on a much more regular basis. With that said, when you're looking at an entire department, there are sub-teams within that department. You've got dispatch within police, right? That's a call center. I also want us to all challenge our thinking. You could have a member of the health department, or you could have a police officer that's been out on a call. Do they have to write their report on site there? Could they be doing some of that at home? That, from an employee standpoint, provides them with that flexibility that they are looking for. Maybe they had a little bit of it, and they are seeing in other areas and asking myself, why am I sitting here or being here doing this when I don't need to be? Much similar to the employee right now, that under the fairness, oh, we have to come in on these days because everybody is. They're driving in that commute, staring at the screen, thinking to themselves, why am I here? I don't need to be. That's somebody who's getting very resentful. And they're a good employee. And that is a flight risk. So we're trying so hard to be fair to everybody, and guess what? Maybe we're about to lose good employees by trying to be fair, when we need to make sure that we're being appropriately strategic and communicating good messaging. If this makes sense, say aye. All right. Anybody familiar with proximity bias? Raise your hand if you are. 2, 3, 4 of you. Great. That's why I'm here. Okay. So this is proximity bias. It is this inherent tendency to favor what is physically close to you and what you are familiar with. All right? So that means that when you're in the office and somebody's in the office, I like you, Stephanie. I don't realize I like you maybe more than I like Tami because I'm always remote with Tami, but I just do because I see you more and you're here and you're in 3D form and it's just easier and it's just happening. And as a result of that, I'm more likely to give Stephanie the really cool projects. I'm more likely to promote her. I'm more likely to seek her input. It's just happening. It's not necessarily conscious, but it happens. And when that happens, here's what we are going to experience. Lower staff engagement. Do I honestly have to go further with that? I hope not. You look like a really smart group. Okay. Next, less robust business decisions. So here's what I'm talking about there. When we are making decisions, we are potentially likely to go to the people that we are most familiar with, and therefore we're lacking input from the entire team. And we're often lacking diverse input, because guess what? The people that feel most comfortable, there is a group that does a study of 10,000 employees every month, and quarter. And when they do that, they find that exponentially, people of color, black people, and women will say that they prefer to work remotely. 98% of them say that. Why? Because they feel that they avoid microaggressions. They feel that the psychological kind of code switching that they feel they have to do when moving into the office lessens. So if we have more of them statistically working remotely, that means that we're losing that diverse input, thought, contribution. Now, that does not mean just because they prefer working at home that we put all of our diverse people there, okay? Don't miss the message. What it means is that we need to be conscious of that. We need to make sure our leaders are trained and educated on what this is and understand how to avoid this, okay? Also, less long-term vision, very much the same reasons. Less workforce competence. Guess what? If I'm seeing Stephanie a lot, maybe I'm going to offer her projects that stretch her. Maybe I'm going to give her training opportunities, right? And the less interaction I have, her skills are growing when other people's aren't. And less workforce diversity, as I mentioned. Here is how we avoid it. More inclusive ways of working. We need to make sure when we are holding meetings that we are considering all people. To the point where I have some clients that when they are holding a virtual meeting, some of their in-office staff stay in their office and they chime in remotely. Or everybody in person sits at a conference room table, but they get on their computers and they all hop on, so they're having physical contact in the room with each other, but the people that are remote are seeing them in the box on the screen. Instead of, come on, let's all huddle together. Stephanie, get closer. Okay, are we all in? Okay, we're all in. Can you see me? And we look like these little avatars, right? And we're all figuring it out. It's weird. It's totally weird. Social inclusion. Planning social events where everyone can be present together, okay? Using the office as a tool. We're going to talk about that in a second, so that there is inclusion all the time. There's my IT. What is your name, sir? Scott. Scott said it right. Daniel, I know you love this piece. So IT platforms have got to be solid. The same way that you would never have somebody come into their office and have a chair that's going to break when they sit on it, right? We need to make sure that IT is solid so that it's smooth. It is the most important tool when it comes to having a remote worker. More objective performance management and reward. So we need to make sure we're looking at how we are measuring our performance management right now and our reward system. Are there things right now about the way you're doing it that really lean towards reward or some sort of favoritism for office performance? Because that will become a problem. Not just for the betterment of the organization, but I'm talking to HR people here. You know where that could lead to. And then proactive and inclusive communication. When a meeting is opened, 10% of a meeting from the beginning should be left for open conversation and bringing a human connection. Open a meeting and just throw a question out there. You would be shocked at just opening a meeting with, what's your favorite breakfast food? That's what we're going to talk about today. Michael, what's your favorite breakfast food? Scott, get people talking. It boosts the energy. It allows them to be connected, and then go into the agenda. And we need to make sure that we are there to be both a physical presence and a digital presence. So hanging out for 10 minutes after a meeting so that people can just check in with you, that is how you are connecting with people remotely, not just physically and in person. All right, quickly, how aware of proximity bias are your leaders? Pick a scale, 1 to 10. Where do you think you're at? What do they need to know? Do they even know what it is? I don't know, you didn't. Maybe they need some training. What needs to be put in place to minimize the impacts of this? And what will happen if you do nothing? All right. And as we wrap things up, oh goodness, oh gosh, okay, this is going to be really fast. Really, really fast. Remember what life used to be like? Potlucks, cakes, wasn't that fun? I love her glasses, my favorite. Then we went to this. I don't know who those people are. I have never, ever done a Zoom meeting where everyone looked that happy or all had their cameras on. Seriously? Come on now. This is kind of what we look like now. I think that woman's face says it all. Like, are we doing this right? I don't know. What's with the feedback? Why can't we hear the sound? Whatever it is, right? This is what's called a campfire location at Google. Cool, man, right? Yeah, but they have private sector funds, so seriously, that's not going to happen, right? All right, the reality is a mindset shift, right? We're going to talk about that. Here's what I want you to realize. Your office is no longer a place, it is a tool, okay? Virtual forums, they are now spaces and places. Hear me out. Here's what we know. Digital spaces like your virtual forums, your WebEx, your Teams, your Zoom, these are for reflection and deep work, okay? Consider them places. The office environment, this is in-person places. This is where we're building community culture. This is not where we're getting together to do okay, what's the task? What's the this? That can be done. Nobody has to drive in for that, okay? This is different. No longer a destination, it's a tool. And this is the mindset shift. Neither is better or worse. Please say that. Neither is better or worse. We've got to get that out of our heads. I was saying to somebody this morning, 2 decades from now, our grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be like, what is a time card? And you people sat in traffic every day? Like, no. Why? Like, they're not going to know any different. We're going to be in history books talking about how, the pandemic wasn't the worst. It was afterwards, the helter-skelter about hybrid work. It's like they're not going to know the difference. We're setting the course, okay? All right. There's a lot of discussion right now about how leaders need to level up, and here's what it's about. Right now, Some of you are going to be like, yes, I love government work. I'm all here about helping people and serving. And yes, we need to care about our employees. And there are others that are like, okay, I'm done caring. We need to get some stuff done now. Okay, we've cared enough. I've got council members. I've got constituents in the community, like the backlog. There's issues like I've given them all I can. They need to come and do now. I'm with both sides. I hear you both. Okay? Here's the deal. But people have got to feel it. They've got to feel. And you cannot send mixed messages. We're all guilty of it. Are we happy when we see people? Heck yeah. Oh, God, I'm so happy to see you in 3D form. I've missed you, right? Great. But we can't, as a leader, when we go, oh, this is so much better than being on Zoom. Be careful. Be careful. It's giving an impression of what you prefer. And what you prefer or certain high-level leaders in your organization prefer start to set a standard. The opportunity, biggest opportunity from a skill level perspective for leaders right now is to become multimodal. This means that we can flip between digital and in-person. Digital and in-person. And some skills are different digital. I love, another niche of mine is I teach powerhouse presentations for elected officials. And I do it up and down the state in organizations. And I've talked a lot to people about, but we've been on virtual. And like, how am I supposed to use my body language? And how do and I'm like, please get over it. This is the reality, okay? Get over it. Oh, how do I have a meaningful one-on-one with somebody over a box? I'm like, bleh. Like, get over it. We are no longer in a theater environment. This is not the world of being in person. We are living in a TV society. We are performing on a television screen now. You got to start developing some skills, and there are ways to do it. All right, last set of prompts. I'm a little over. My apologies. I hate doing that, but it's got to be done sometimes. You need this. Here, answer this. What blind spots currently exist in your organization, please? How are these getting in the way of a healthy, supportive, hybrid environment? And what conversations or actions do you need to take right now? Oh, so smart. Yes, please take a picture. Frame it. Put all 3 of the prompts framed in your office. I think that would be beautiful. All right. We started talking about uncharted territory, right? Things are going to change at any minute. This COVID is here to stay. We could have different viruses. It's not going away. I mean, this is it. And hybrid is here to stay as well. I don't have all the answers. These are things for us to be aware of and start to digest. And like I said, some of you have been in your head going, oh, yes. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, my gosh. And others are like, I do not like her. It's all right. I have other friends. But the one thing I do believe I know is that all of us are here, I believe, or I choose to believe, and I've talked to some of you already. There is a want and need at some level to help, serve, impact. We can't do that without people. I had a mentor that said, take care of your team and they will take care of you. I believe that. And I know that I'm here to impact and improve the lives of others. I've known that for a long time. I don't get to be on the front line, you guys do. So I feel like if I can share a little bit of something and it makes a difference and you guys can take that back and it can help your organizations, some of you are going to do this really well and others of you are going to struggle more. I don't know what the difference is going to be. You guys have to decide. But it's an adventure. It is like a voyage of discovery into unknown lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge. There's the knowledge piece, Graham. It should appeal to those with a good sense of adventure. If you're like, I'm done, no more adventure, go take a spa weekend because it's not stopping, all right? I want to thank you very much. I will be here from 12 to 12:15 to chat and answer questions, and then I'm off to another event. But thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Oh, you're perfect. Well, that's a pretty powerful, energetic, challenge-oriented way to get us kick-started today. So huge thanks to you, Ms. Potter, for joining us. Now we all have some work to do in terms of meeting that challenge, and we're going to turn and we're going to talk about evidence, data. We need it, right? And so our next panel is going to help us sort through that. Our next panel is going to present really two different perspectives on data, how you can look at it. And note, I know a number of folks were taking shots, screenshots of the last presentation. We'll make everything available after this meeting, so we'll send it out to all folks that are registered for this. So that's going to happen. Now it is my great honor and privilege to introduce our first esteemed panelist, the distinguished Supervisor Carson, who has served as, come on up, who has served as CSAC President, multiple policy committee chairs, NACO board member, NACO policy committee chairs, and has been on the CSAC executive committee and the board of directors for nearly 30 years in his time in office. He has a wealth of knowledge, and so please join me in welcoming Supervisor Keith Carson from Alameda County. I'm going to invite Tami and Yvonne up as well in just a moment. Supervisor Carson is here to share some work that was done with East Bay Forward related to workforce. They did an assessment thinking about what it means for the region's economy moving forward in terms of the impacts on the workforce. And so he will share some highlights related to that. And then we will shift to a presentation by two HR leaders, one from San Luis Obispo County, right here in SLO. That is Miss Tami Douglas Schatz, who also sits on our California Counties Foundation Board, and also Yvonne Torres, who's the Assistant Director of Human Resources right down the road. Just follow the coast down to Santa Barbara, which is where she is at. So thank the two of you for joining us today as well. Supervisor Carson, to you, my friend.
I'd like to say good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share some of the things that we've been doing in the Bay Area, the East Bay in particular, around coming through and out of the pandemic. Before I kind of get into the context of East Bay Forward, which is the report I shared with a number of you on your table, you can take that with you. It's a pretty comprehensive report, and I'll talk about it a little bit. I'd like to take a few minutes to put a couple of things in context, if I can. For those who may or may not be familiar with the East Bay, Alameda County is one of 4 counties in the immediate center of the East Bay: Santa Clara, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, and the city and county of San Francisco, to put the context of Alameda County into some kind of perspective. We also we're a county that has about 1,600,000 residents, extremely diverse in terms of rural, suburban, urban context in terms of our county. So some reflection of all of the things that the state of California has to experience. We have viticulture, agriculture, manufacturing, technology, warehouse, the 4th largest port in California, the 10th largest port in the country. We have about 131 languages that are spoken in our county. So if you talk about the cultural and ethnic mix, it's a reflection of the entire globe. We have fairly recognizable higher education institutions of education. You see Berkeley. We have 3 national laboratories: Sandia, Berkeley, Lawrence, and Berkeley Livermore Laboratory. We have biosciences, technology, and so we are very fortunate to kind of have a reflection of the challenges that all of us are talking about today. To put a little bit more context together, many of you in the room who are elected know that in 2006, we emerged on a 10-year visioning plan. In 2006, we brought in a futurist, Marianne Devereaux. We brought in several futurists, but she led the group. She had an international clientele at that time, including China, including different parts of Europe, Central and Latin America. But it was housed out of the Stanford region. And we also introduced her to CSAC at one of the CSAC events. And I'm saying that because of the fact that her engagement in our 10-year visioning plan in 2006, which we re-upped and renewed in 2016, and now we have it going to 2026, brought together external sources to assist us in kind of looking at the future at that point, including Google partnered with us after the second year, in not just for their technology engagement, but the vast number of their clientele that were international gave us access to them, as well as we brought together locally in Alameda County, not only government and academia and the business community and the philanthropic community, but we all came together in looking at how we would plan out the next 10 years. And for those of you who might have been at the CSAC event at the Claremont Hotel when Dr. Marianne Devereaux in 2006 gave us the future, she mentioned pandemics back then. We really didn't know what that meant, but she said there would be a series of pandemics. And so as a result of having that kind of a 10-year visioning plan, we did a lot of demographic and data gathering, which we still do on multiple sources today. We brought together about 1,100 of our millennials at that time in a whole year effort to get a sense of what approached them, what kept them working for our county, what changes we needed. We even started to reach out back then in 2006 to the Gen X generation, the Z generation, knowing that they were hopefully in the pipeline for future growth in Alameda County. To talk more specifically, briefly about our efforts today, because of the fact that we have developed now almost a 20-year relationship with government, business, academia, the philanthropic community, we've been able to consistently understand the interconnectedness, the relative impacts that we all have on each other. And as such, our planning is with leveraging all of the resources that we have across government and business and academia and the philanthropic community. So as we were coming through and are going through this pandemic, on the government side, just for Alameda County as an example, we have 427 authorized positions just on the general government within our county structure, and we have total funded unfilled position. They're funded, but they're not filled, 1,437. In healthcare today, we have a total funded position of about 2,151 authorized positions. Total funded unfilled positions just in the area of healthcare, 696 individuals. Public assistance, total funded 3,058 authorized positions. Total funded unfilled positions, 871. In public safety, which includes public defender, the sheriff, the district attorney, probation, we have 4,851 authorized positions. total unfunded, unfilled positions, 1,546. And then our total number of employees for all of Alameda County, there are county employees, 13,487 authorized positions, and today we have 4,555 positions that are unfilled. For those of you who know, I mean, having the funds there and the inability to fill these positions have a grave impact upon our ability to serve people in county government, which is the safety net. Move from the government side to the side that primarily I'll focus on today. We were very fortunate in Alameda County because of the fact, and our county administrator just walked in, Susan Marinishi, has in her department housed the largest business association in not just Alameda County, but in Contra Costa and Alameda County. It's called Economic Development Alliance for Business, and I've had the fortunate ability to be the president of that organization for more than 25 years. That organization brings together on a regular basis the diversity of businesses that we have in the East Bay, but it also brings their thought leaders, their decision makers, their CEOs to a common table on a regular basis with academia, the philanthropic community, and government, as well as having labor union leadership at that table as well. And so over the last 30 years, which the organization's been in existence, and particularly the last 25 years, we've been able to collaboratively work in terms of planning to make sure that the mission statement of the East Bay Economic Development Alliance is constantly met, and that's to retain business, to attract business, and to also prepare the workforce, the diverse workforce that we have in the East Bay. And as a result of that, we constantly are educated, informed about each other's challenges and each other's struggles. We began in 2020 and 2021 through East Bay Forward, this organization that has a full complement, full-time staff, to bring together outside forces, thought leaders from around the country, to say, how do we address this pandemic as we know it in our area? When the pandemic actually broke out, I myself, I think the county administrator, was at our biannual trade mission in Shanghai, in Wuhan, in Shenzhen, at the time in which the pandemic broke out, and we weren't aware of it until we got back home, that this was emerging. And so, as a result of this, we've been bringing together a number of thought leaders to say, how do we address the workforce, and what are the other impacting issues other than just remote work? And as such, we have put together this report, which I've left with you on your desk. To briefly run through it real quickly and then move on to the other participants, there are a number of things that we focused on outside of the mission statement, which I've already given to you, which is, again, to retain, to train, and to attract the workforce, the diverse workforce, which includes government, but also business in this area. And we understood the relativeness of not just figuring out remote work, but all of the intricacies of putting remote work into place, other than just access to broadband or the ability for people to be able to understand how to enter the diverse portals that you have to transverse as you use your internet. But also the fact that childcare, daycare was an extremely important issue because everyone couldn't afford it. and because of the fact that a lot of individuals had to balance that work-life balance at home. The cost of living before inflation started to hit us. Matter of fact, as a result of the network, we spent, within Alameda County alone, over $100 million in making sure people were fed, so that if they're fed, then maybe they can work. And we also understood the importance of trying to figure out how to support people with their various needs as a result of that. And so being able to figure out not just whether or not you work remotely or have access to the necessities to keep you working remotely, it was also being able to figure out what does life look like afterwards, because if you can envision it, then you can more likely achieve it. Our network was the network that I referenced that we've had together for about 25 years. And then again, that is the leadership from Tesla, from Clorox, from Safeway, from Kaiser, from Chevron, but it's also the union leadership. It's the leadership from UC Berkeley, from Cal State East Bay, the fact that we have government and nonprofit and business working together. It was the ability to bring the leadership and the thought leadership of the CEOs from all of those areas to kind of figure out what does life look like coming out of the pandemic, and how do we prepare people for it. We understand the fact that through the ongoing focus groups that we host, the data that we continue to integrate, bringing everyone to the table, which is time consuming and very challenging, but giving everybody a right to be heard and understood, and to try to figure out how we can organizationally address those needs is something that we're attempting to do. But we're very fortunate because of the fact that we have such a diverse group of individuals who are either CEOs, thought leaders, or decision makers, that we can navigate some of the rough terrain around these issues and be able to leverage that at either Washington and or in Sacramento with our excellent elected officials that we have in that regard. Let me say to conclude, and there's more I can say, but let me say to conclude, we understand that that the Spanish flu circulated for more than 20-some years in some iteration as the world had a major pandemic in the early 20s. And as such, we have attempted to make sure that mentally we prepare people that this is a long haul with just like the stock market, ups and downs. And that's not to say everybody's embraced that, but we've attempted to do that so that the mindset is such that this is going to take a long time. And in order to address the workforce challenges, either on the public side or the private side, we've started looking at our institutions from daycare to childcare and what kind of facilities we set up and integrate in order to engage young children, unbeknownst to themselves at that age, how to maximize their motor skills, maximize their learning. We're working with our K through 12 institutions to make sure that we consistently have in our local K through 12 institutions, as well as our community colleges and universities, people from the various business sectors that we have and government sectors to go into the classroom, to engage with young people, to let them know what's out there in their own community, what those possibilities are, and what the fundamentals are that are needed to start to look at moving in those directions. Because in order to fulfill these vacancies that we have today, to navigate the rough terrain of not knowing the knowledge base that you need in order to achieve or integrate into any of these businesses or opportunities, means that it will take a long time for them to be able to do that. And so we start at that early age And we also make sure that business, the diversity of business, helps us to fund those sources by giving internship and pay, and connecting pay so that people understand what the benefits are that come out of that for the long term. I'll stop there because I don't want to take up more of the time, but we do know that this is a long-term endeavor with many hills and valleys to navigate.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Carson, for sharing those insights. Certainly the assemblage of the thought leaders to help guide policy, help guide how to move forward and position for a changing workforce. What we're going to do now is we're going to shift to Ms. Douglas Schatz and Ms. Torres, who are going to present a different perspective from a HR, county human resources perspective in terms of some of the really remarkable work that they've done. We're then going to open it up for some dialogue. And so as you're thinking about what questions or comments that you want to make, jot those down and we'll get to those. But let's first turn it over to Ms. Douglas Schatz and Ms. Torres.
Thank you, Graham. And it was a privilege to share this session with you, Supervisor Carson. So first, Yvonne and I want to acknowledge that we had help with this presentation. We worked together, but we also gathered data from our HR colleagues in Monterey County, in Santa Cruz County, and in Ventura County. And we wish they could have joined us, but they are here in spirit, and we're happy to share their data with you.
Okay, so Tami and I will be switching off just because we have a lot of information, and this way there's some breakup of the information you're receiving. So I'll start with the agenda. So today we're going to talk about current labor market conditions, life cycle of an employee and current challenges, employee expectations, and recruitment and retention initiatives.
So this is what the labor market conditions look like. If you looking online, if you're reading any professional journals or reading anything, actually, it is a little crazy. It's the pandemic meets retirements, meets welcoming Gen Z and millennials to the workforce and to the leaders of our workforce. And with all that comes upheaval. I know you can read all this, but it's been, and you've experienced it. Supervisor Carson mentioned the childcare struggles. We hear about it all the time. You probably saw upheaval in especially the private sector, lots of unionization. We called it Striketober last fall. It is an employees market right now, and employees are flexing their muscle, and we need to listen.
Okay, so I'm going to brief you a little bit on the labor market conditions that we're currently facing. So the pandemic accelerated the workforce trends that were already in motion, and we will not return to the normal that it was, but I think we all know that and we feel it. So currently, some of the challenges that we're all facing, and I think that we would agree upon, is the labor and skills shortage, rising inflation, the Great Resignation, job market, which is on fire, and increasing regulations. So what we are facing, I know Santa Barbara County and I know Ventura County is facing is not so much the Great Resignation, but they're calling it like the Great Reshuffle. And what's happening is that employees aren't leaving the workforce, they're actually just changing where they're working. We're having like our safety going into non-safety, leaving traditional jobs that they had, the crossing over and deciding that they want a career change. So that is something that is also happening. So a changing workforce demographics, a variety of differing characteristics, preferences, and demands are emerging from growing millennial workforce. Has challenged organizations to reimagine their business strategies, including the need for more innovative HR strategies, programs, and practices. We have an aging workforce. The top reason workers aged 55 to 64 say they would consider leaving their employer is because they're ready to stop working. People are starting to value life balance, and they're thinking, the pandemic jarred them to say, what's really important, so they're leaving early. And so as far as the Great Resignation, prior to the pandemic, the U.S. experienced the lowest unemployment rates in over 50 years, significantly increasing competition for talent and requiring employers to provide a compelling employee value proposition and employee experience. We're also seeing that employees are now in the driver's seat, and they're saying this is what we want, and they want to be more, they want culture, it's not so much compensation, it's more not work-life balance, now it's life-work balance. And so organizations are having to change the way that their work environment is. So women returning after so many months at home also means for many mothers finding a new form of childcare and giving up additional time spent with families and kids that the pandemic provided, it's challenging. And so taking into account how the labor force was growing pre-pandemic, 2.3 million fewer women are working now that would have been without the disruption. So that's another, the pandemic, it just kind of made people think, what's important? Maybe I need to stay home, which is causing a shortage in our workforce. So, let's see, we can go to the next.
So more labor market conditions. I already mentioned increasing union momentum, and if those of you who are involved in union negotiations know that this is a key time for employees, and employees have high expectations. They want competitive wages, and like Yvonne mentioned, that's just the beginning. When that used to be our goal in bargaining was to create good benefits and good pay and try to highlight our pension benefit that we still enjoy, they say, thank you, that's a good start. And what else do you have for us? And so, we've always had in the public sector that sense of purpose and the ability to talk about service to the community. And we're going to talk more about what to do to achieve attracting good candidates, but we need to really highlight that purpose and how good it feels to be of service, because work-life balance is something we can offer, but people want to feel fulfilled, and I do think that's our unique value proposition. This slide is talking about things that maybe aren't working anymore, and just to shift a little bit to the insurance markets, those of you who participate in risk management know that this hard market is creating additional upheaval. We've had more regulation than we've ever had before around workplace safety, and some of that is good. We're highlighting how important it is for employees to be safe in the workplace, and we've risen to the challenge. Our legislation has risen to that challenge, and we have all scrambled to try to make sure people are safe, both physically and psychologically in the workplace. But there's been a downside in the insurance market. In workers' compensation, the expectations that the counties carry the burden of almost every injury that you can imagine has a good side and a bad side. And our claims are skyrocketing. Juries are awarding huge damages. Our premiums are going up all the time. And so we've got this pressure to meet the needs of employees, and that costs money and energy, and then we've got all of the pressures that our budgets and our risk management is providing as well. So I'm going to hit employee demographics and then turn it back to Yvonne. So we have highlighted here some key demographic data from San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara. So just starting with the breakdown of male and female employees, we have more female employees in both of our counties than we have male employees. And what we've noticed in San Luis Obispo is that has driven even a bigger conversation about childcare than ever before. We had a lot of women leaving the workforce to take care of children, and some of them are not coming back in, or they're wanting to come back in part-time with reduced schedules, and so that the child care conversation isn't going to go away. And I am not saying that there aren't men who aren't helping taking care of children. There are. We are valuing paternity leaves, and we are encouraging our parents of all genders to take their time off. Median age of employees is going down. We've seen that it makes sense with the boomers leaving, and so our employment base is getting younger and younger. This is the most diverse workforce we've ever had. Right. And our colleagues in Monterey, Ventura, and Santa Cruz are echoing that sentiment. And with diversity comes the demand for better communication and better inclusion, and we need to pay attention to that, as Deanna mentioned. Check out our median time in service. We really highlighted that data point here for all 5 counties that we talked to. Think about that. For San Luis Obispo County, half of our employees have 6 years or less time with our county. And the pressure that puts on our tenured staff, on our leaders to make sure that we're bringing those people along, that takes time and energy on top of all of the important work that we're doing. So Monterey is right there with us, Santa Cruz is right there with us, Ventura is right there with us. Santa Barbara's got a little bit more on us there, but we're all feeling the pinch of having to make sure training and development is up to speed for our workforce. And then pension status is on here because I think you're all well aware of pension reform that came along in 2013. It was really helpful to our budgets, and I think it sent a good message to the community that we were taking our fiscal responsibility for pensions seriously. But what's happening in San Luis Obispo County is that our employees are recognizing that that's a lesser benefit. And when we have tried to also share the cost of that benefit with employees, it's resulted in some pretty impactful net pay results. So we've coined a phrase in HR that we are losing employees to net pay shock. So they get that first paycheck and they're like, whoa, where is all this going? So it's a challenge, and we could have a whole discussion on that. All right, I'll turn it back over to Yvonne.
Okay, and I just want to add that our number was similar as that in that tiers as employees coming in, and part of it is that the new employees coming in don't really value our pension, so they're saying, why is this money being taken out? I don't really plan on being here 5 years, and I want my money. So that's an issue with us also. So I will talk about the increasing turnover. So for SLO County, there's been a steady increase over 5 years. Santa Barbara County, we're trending at 9.6%, and the increase this year was from last year at 7%. So we still are increasing at a slower rate. And we, when I first saw this and looked at it, I said, that can't be right. I told Tami, I think we're like at 15%, and I had to run the numbers. And then she said, well, what are you doing different? And I said, well, maybe what we're doing is working. And what it is pre-pandemic, our remote workers were at 3%. And during the pandemic, it went up to 33%, and we're still about 30%. So I think, we're retaining a lot of the employees, because when, it was time to come back to work, a lot of them weren't having it because they've already restructured their lives, and it's like, okay, well, if I have to come back to work, then I'm going to have to find another job. So we modify, hybrid work. It wasn't 100%, but working with the employees. And we also have increased a lot of our wellness programs for our employees, and just try to do whatever we could to retain them. So. Okay, so let me go to Ventura County. So for Ventura County, at 15%, and over the past 5 years, it climbed from 7 to 15%, then back to 10 during the pandemic, and then there was a sharp increase over the last year. And for Santa Cruz, a steady increase over the past 5 years, and that's similar to SLO County's steady increase.
So I'm probably not going to say anything you don't already know, but turnover is expensive. We've been talking a lot in the HR world about the cost of turnover. There's both soft and hard costs. Quite honestly, they feel hard all the way around to us. You've got, just the churn of advertising and interviewing, and that all costs real dollars. But the soft costs are painful. You really do lose productivity, and you lose connection with your community and your constituents. I mean, you've got people who have long-term relationships with the community that are exiting, and so what is that doing to our service? And it's devastating. And we put a dollar figure on it. We looked back a year, and we took every single position that left, a person that left, what position they were in, how much that cost, and then we put a multiplier on it. For positions that are really easy to recruit for and train, not that anything's easy, but there are some that are easier than others. You put a multiplier on it of about 0.5%. For those really complicated, technical, relationship-oriented positions, it can be double the cost of the position. So in San Luis Obispo County, we put a $15 million price tag on 1 year of turnover. So, and that's conservative. So it's a painful proposition.
Okay, so the hidden costs of turnover, and which everyone probably knows and feels, is losing your best talent means losing reliable winners, constant innovators, most effective problem solvers, and it affects team morale. So this is a summary report from Gallup, and basically what it's saying is, if you're unable to retain your best talent, you're losing capabilities and impacting your capabilities to achieve your key objectives in your identified timeframes. So what they're looking at now is, one option is training your managers to have frequent, meaningful conversations with employees about what really matters to them. And again, it's about the employee, and they're driving the needs and what they want in their place of work. What's frustrating them? What are their dreams? Where do they want to go? Then you'll at least have a shot at winning back your stars and saving future of your organization. And so a lot of exercise that I know we have at the county and other organizations are having is trying to connect employees with purpose, because like you were saying, purpose, that's really ingrained in them. Like, what is my purpose, and does my purpose and my values, that's what's going on here where I'm working. And sometimes employees are saying no, and they leave, and sometimes we have to take that hit because it's best for them to find something than being in a wrong role, because that could also increase costs and affect morale across the organization.
It really does go to show that our connection with our staff is one tool we have to retain talent. We have to stay really connected. So we talked about vacancy rates among our counties, and you'll see Monterey isn't here. They track vacancies by department. So put all that in. But vacancy rate measure is really different for counties than their turnover rate. So where turnover is a look back of how many people left the organization, vacancy is a one-time snapshot. For us, it's quarterly, others it may be monthly, of how many positions are sitting open. And Supervisor Carson mentioned that as well, that at any moment, you might have a position you can pay for, and you can't get it filled. So it's just another way of measuring our pain right now. And we all have a different level of it. It's just the snapshot of the moment. But you can really feel how much effort you're putting into the hamster wheel of recruitment and hiring by looking at your vacancy and turnover together.
Okay, and then we have public sector applicants. So most of the counties and the ones listed do use the NeoGov applicant tracking system, so we were able to get this information. And the number of applications per job has dropped 21%, and you can see in the different counties and how it has dropped. And I know that, and I did talk to a couple other counties, it's dropped, and the quality of candidates is not as high as they should be. So, which is causing, I think the next slide we have failed recruitments or having to leave the recruitments continuous because we may be getting, 20, 30 people, but the core of those people, who are they, is you'd probably get like 5 to 10 who are actually qualified, and then of course, next slide we'll talk about the time frame, and by the time we interview them, because of all the policies, civil service rules and everything, they're gone. So that's a challenge.
So to continue with doom and gloom, it's a theme. We promise we'll get to some happy news, I guess. Yeah, right. So this slide was really actually funny to put together. So 5 counties are talking, and we're like, what is your percent of failed recruitments? And we're all like, failed recruitments, that's not a metric that we track. I mean, we don't even track that. We started tracking failed recruitments last year, and we literally had to hand count how many times we did a recruitment that we didn't get a position filled. It's just not something we've tracked before. So you can see that like Ventura, that was at least 10%. Santa Barbara is like, well, we don't really track it that way, but we certainly know that the continuous recruitments have skyrocketed. So meaning that every time you don't fill something in your normal time frame, you've got to put it on a list of, we're going to keep this open all the time. Right. Both Monterey and Santa Cruz said that they didn't track it well enough to give us a good number, but we're all experiencing this. So stay tuned for more and better metrics on failed recruitments.
Okay, so back to a little doom and gloom before we get to the end. So what public sector are facing right now, I mean, more so now because we need to fill positions, is that the minimum qualifications are overly stringent, restrict already shrinking applicant pools. So we're looking at other ways, like how can we attract those and how can we hire for skill. But we do have to make sure that we have the knowledge for the position. So we are all working to find different ways. New employees often get sticker shock when they get their first paycheck due to high pension costs. Government continues to be slow to adopt and implement change. The private sector has been much more nimble in implementing recruitment and retention programs to attract and retain top talent. And then last but not least, the high cost of living, housing costs, and availability to continue it hinders the ability to bring new talent to the area. And I know for our county, it's about, not so much about cost, but it's inventory. So we are facing some challenges in that area.
So shifting over to how our employees are doing, Deanna did a great job of setting us up to remind us that we have to listen to our employees. And we did a couple things. We looked at the research and we've talked to our employees. And it's fascinating and reassuring that all of the challenges that we're facing have a complement answer if we listen to our staff. So looking at the research broke out these 5 areas of things that are important to employees. And just going down the list, addressing burnout. And a lot of that, I do believe people were experiencing some burnout before the pandemic. I think anything that we're seeing exaggerated after the pandemic absolutely started before the pandemic. And there was stress and there was burnout. And with all of the pandemic impacts, it just exaggerated. Safety, we've mentioned it a little bit, and our employees were very grateful for the efforts that we undertook to keep them safe at work. We got a lot of positive feedback about all of our efforts, and but it did highlight some political divisions, and that added stress to the workplace. And the research shows, and our employees are telling us, that to address all that, they really are expecting their employer to help them with health benefits and workplace flexibility, mental health benefits, financial assistance, even if it's maybe not hard dollars, but directing people toward help to manage their lives. And childcare, where I know we have a whole session on family-friendly workplace. Childcare is going to be a big discussion, but this is all over the research. And then equity and inclusion. So the research is telling us this is what employees need. We did an employee survey in the fall, and we didn't know how employee responses would line up with the research. It actually lined up perfectly. Our employees said that these things are the most important things to them too. So we are paying close attention, and this gives us a roadmap of what we need to focus on. And like the County of Santa Barbara, we immediately implemented some mental health programs and some wellness programs, and of course that is a continued focus.
So this is on a positive note. All the
One slide.
All the things that we are working on, and what we can do is enhance our benefits, work on down payment. We are actually have a down payment. The county has partnered on the down payment assistant program, and I think
Yes, we both are. We're both in about the same place. So if any of you are familiar with the Rural Counties group, partnered with a finance company, Golden State Finance, yes. I believe it is, and they're offering a down payment assistance program that we can offer our employees. So Yvonne's team and my team are working closely with that group to try to roll that out to our employees soon. We're very excited about it.
Right, very promising. We have a couple in our county, but this looks really good. So we're hoping that employees with awareness use it. Focus on wellness and flexibility, that's big. And so I know SLO County and our county, we've had lots of wellness programs, but employees never tapped into it. The communication wasn't very clear. There wasn't that much outreach as much as there is now. So there are current programs that are being used that weren't utilized prior to the pandemic because I don't know if there wasn't a need, employees weren't thinking about themselves like they are now, so that's good. Advanced vacation and sick leave, I can't speak to that, maybe you could, but a hybrid working environment, flexible schedules, that's big for us, very big. Childcare subsidy, financial incentive, we do have for new hires. And what the County of Santa Barbara has just added, because we've found the need, is a concierge service for finding housing for the newly hired management and above and hard to fill positions, because we've had employees come in and accept a job and then resign a few weeks later saying, I couldn't find housing. So just to send an employee out to look for housing is very difficult. So we will be providing a service for them to connect with someone in our community to work with them to find short-term and long-term housing. So I don't know if you want to speak to the...
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit to that, and then we can then pause and have more conversations. So some of the feedback that we had in our county was that new employees coming on board didn't want to wait to accumulate vacation time, and wanted to be able to leverage some time off right away. And during the pandemic, when we were hiring new employees, they needed to have sick time. So we just advanced that and made sure that they had a pool to work with. So it didn't cost more money because we just advanced it to them. So we're trying to be creative with tools that we already have, and not just create new programs to implement. So we're happy to talk more about this, but I know we might want to take questions.
We love there we go. I think we are. We're on? All right. Love the questions, so that we can have some dialogue here as well. Really appreciate all the information. I want to, before opening up for folks, I want to pose a question to you, Supervisor Carson. There's so much data and detail in the East Bay Forward report, and I'm wondering if you can address perhaps how you may want to approach it or use it, this conflation between increasing vacancies that you spoke about and higher expectations of public service within your community. And so there's this dynamic whereby there are fewer and fewer employees, and yet there's higher and higher expectations about what they are doing and providing within your community. And if there are additional insights from East Bay Forward, from that report, or in your role as a supervisor, for us to think about.
I think there's multiple answers to that, but the first thing that we realize is that the competition for current employees and future employees, that competition is not just within the government itself, it's within the whole infrastructure of job opportunities. And so we have to do what we see taking place on the private sector to the extent that we can, because government does operate under another set of principles and guidelines. We get our principal money, our primary money, 50% of it at least, from the federal and state government, which has conditions on how those dollars are supposed to be used, so it's not as flexible as it might be over in another one of the business sectors, especially the tech sector. And so what we have to do in balancing that is to really kind of go after more flexibility in terms of how we address a number of issues. We're looking at how do we take advantage of space, because that's a big issue on the private sector side, and how do we use the space on the government sector side. Might not really appear to you to be a primary issue, but it is an important issue. It's a cost factor. Technology is an issue, and how we integrate that, how we integrate artificial intelligence to the extent that we can. We're trying to look at that. Do we also embody the gig economy into all of this? all of that has to look at not just balancing or attracting current day county employees in this particular case, to your question, but how we have to compete with the global business environment in order to retain and keep them, just as we talked about the competition for flexible funding, sick leave time, days off, and all of those kinds of things. Because again, we have a constitutional statutory responsibility as county government to fulfill, and doing an economy like we're experiencing now, with high inflation, with the war, deglobalization, all of those things taking place, it appears as though we're going to have more people coming through the portals of the county to receive basic services, which is what we do, because we're the safety net.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Carson. I know there are a couple of folks with roaming mics, and so please raise your hand, and they'll come find you. We will begin with Supervisor Silvera.
I'm on. Thank you. You had mentioned in your slide presentation that one of the challenges, and I think we're facing this challenge, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is that there's been this push in government that anybody in management positions has to have a 4-year degree. And what we're finding is that we've had longtime folks that have worked with the county who, for whatever reason, didn't take that extra step to get the 4-year degree. Now you're talking like 20-year employee with the county who has the institutional knowledge, and in my opinion, probably is the most qualified person for the job, but not having that 4-year degree precludes them from moving up into that management position. I think that we need to go away from that. I think that we need to get back to a place of let's hire the best person for the job. If they have the 4-year degree, and I'll be honest with you, for me, I went to 2 years of college and then dropped out and went back to the dairy and went to work, and so I would be precluded from one of these positions. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
So I'll talk first because we're working with on this now. So a lot of it is, some of the positions do require like engineers or licensed, special license, those we have to stick with. But as far as the degrees, we found that, and it was because a lot of the recruitments weren't failing, but they were saying, oh, these individuals didn't qualify. Managers would come and say, but they have all this experience. So we'd look at it, and a lot of it was the interpretation of how they're reviewing the applications based on that recruiter or how it's always been, and the civil service rules. And so expanding, and we're training and showing our recruiters, they have to look at these applications with a different view now and expand what it says. And what it says is you have to have this or combination of, the above. And what they were doing is they were saying, oh, they don't have a 4-year degree, so we're not even going to go down below to see what that is, and not working on the combination. So we are working with our employee relations chief to see, like, not all positions you can review the applications like that. But, we're going back and we're looking to see that, and we found that we are turning down a lot of applicants based on how the recruiter is looking at that application based on what they think. So it's in HR, the recruiters need to be trained to know these specific positions, or, a lot of them are management positions that require it. And like you, I started Santa Barbara County 32 years ago, and I went to college while I was during my career, and years ago they gave me credit for the experience in my 2 years, but then at some point there was a certain level that I couldn't go beyond without a 4-year degree, and so then I finished. But they aren't looking at that anymore. So we're trying to get them back, because nothing really says, unless it's like an engineering certificate or something that requires a special skill or knowledge, that it has to be that, and there are some job descriptions that specifically state that, and we are looking at that right now, because we have to refocus on how we can bring everyone in and hire for skill and experience. And so that's what we're doing. We're looking at the way we look at applications. We're retraining our recruiters. We're looking at those specific job specs that we think can be changed. And we are going to have to go through a meet and confer process, the ones that are, strict to has to be and not or. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
And I would just add that I agree that in most cases, a college degree is an artificial barrier to promotion. And our challenge in San Luis Obispo is more of a structural challenge. We have a lot of approvals, mandatory meet and confer over changing qualifications. And then we have a Civil Service Commission process that requires approval of changes. And so it's incumbent upon us to philosophically make sure that we're reviewing for inclusion, not exclusion. And I feel like we've done a good job of that. And now we've got to bring our partners along to broaden qualifications.
And it is a concern for us because what we're saying is that only those applicants who can afford college maybe or have the ability can get this higher level job. And really that's not what we want. That's not inclusion. That's not, promoting all what we want to promote for Santa Barbara County. So we are looking at that and we're finding that just because this is how we've done it and this is how, everyone's just has these blinders on and we're now telling our staff, no, the world is different. You can't we don't have, 100 applications for this job that you have to be so strict. We have like 20. And we got to look through those applications and make sure that we're getting those best qualified. So it's a work in progress.
It's a really good question, and you each touched on labor a little bit, and the meet and confer that's required for some of these things. You're changing the MQs, or whatever it may be around that. So if you're a county, you have the best strategy in the world that you've developed, but you have to negotiate that. What's the role in labor for all of this, and how is that, or has that relationship changed at all? Let me go to Supervisor Carson.
Yeah, labor plays a critical role in California and in all of our counties, the 58 counties. As we've attempted to do, we don't just within Alameda County stay focused on the specific issue at hand. In this case, whether or not you have to go through meet and confer, have to go through the Civil Service Commission process, because that's a directive that we have to follow. I also have had the luxury and the privilege to chair our budget process for the last 25 plus years. And when I initially started, it was just department heads and the CAO in a room making the decisions. I immediately worked it was Steve Zaley before Susan came. And then we worked towards, when I became chair, bringing in other key stakeholders, and this is an important factor, way back then. Not only department heads, but community-based representatives, union representatives. We brought people down from Sacramento. Haley was just there a couple of weeks ago. And we use that as an ongoing engagement process because it takes a long time to develop a relationship that is counterintuitive to your responsibilities that are there, to understand the cause and effect. And so in this particular case, it means labor really fundamentally understanding, what is the cost factor? How is this going to affect my membership? They got to be able to see their membership in the change that might be coming, or understanding that if they don't make the change, that other areas are rapidly changing and their membership will go to where these other activities are taking place, and they're still getting those benefits that they seek, and also the live-work balance that they seek in their lives. And so we have to tackle each of these issues as they come to us, but they're all integrated issues, and we have to really paint the picture with especially our labor partners, our community-based partners, and others, where they see themselves and how they fit in that picture long-term for that issue and the multiple issues that affect them.
So that sounds like a more transparent decision-making process where folks feel that.
An attempt to doing that, yes.
Well, I guess you have to start there. You have to start somewhere. Looks like we have a question here from Supervisor
My
Washington.
question got answered. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
What's the role in culture in all this? We've talked a lot about policy, process, how you adapt locally. But if you're shifting to a place where more and more of your workforce is remote, how do you retain culture in an organization?
It's like $1 million question, and we have like
That's
3
why we have
minutes
you.
left. You know, we've talked a lot about this, and I always personally, when we were dispersed for the pandemic, I asked my staff, how are we going to retain our culture? And what the feedback that I received was, let's really value our time together, but it doesn't have to be every day. So we don't need to have, we can have quarterly all staff meetings, and that can carry us. That works fine when you have an existing team, but with turnover and you have a new team coming in, you have to be really purposeful. I think we just have to pay more attention. So for example, when we have a new team member come on, we have a training plan that includes building relationships with people. And we probably didn't pay as much attention to that in the past. So you have to be more purposeful about relationship building.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think we have a final question out there.
I'm glad I'm going last. So it's nice to see Yvonne and Tami.
saw
I worked
you.
both for San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara at different times as the IT director for both organizations. I think what's missing in this conversation is IT and I'm in technology, so I'm going to be a little biased. But we need to change the framework of the conversation. We needed the pandemic for IT to have a seat at the table. When you really look at it, at the executive table, it took the pandemic for IT to elevate to that role, right?
That's a good point.
So the counties in general, I came from the private sector, and I have now 1/3 of my career in here, and also in Obamacare for 2 years. So I have a good, background in multiple areas. I think what is needed is changing the framework of the discussion. The civil service rules were put together, 80 years ago? So this is a different world, and it's beyond technology. We have a workforce that you don't need to explain technology to them. They will explain technology to you, that will operate,
That's for
Even
sure.
with 40 years experience, they will explain to you how it works. So we need to stop looking at as IT as a utility, but as an agent of change.
Yes.
We keep on hiring more people to do the same thing. That's the definition of insanity. Einstein. So you can solve the problem from the point of view that the problem was created. So we need to change the point of reference. And I think technology is a player in that. Mm-hmm. And having said that, we are running our vacancy ready for hire. I just lost this morning one of my network engineers. And the private sector is scavenging government. That never happened before. The private sector, Cisco, is stealing people from me to go and work for them. So that never happened before. That tells you how bad it is in some areas. So the question is, how do we make an investment to move forward? If the counties in general they have a technical debt, 5 years behind in technology, can't do that anymore. That's not saving money. You're just not moving ahead. So, and that's my point. So
that's it's elevating technology, incorporating it as part of the solution. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna ask the three of you, thumbs up, thumbs down, in the middle, about the elevated role of technology as we move forward and try to adapt to a new workforce.
Make a quick comment?
Yes, please do.
While technology is an equalizer, it is also one that is not an equalizer. And I totally agree with you that we need technology. And it's not just, it is a cultural, it is a racial inequity issue, but it's also an age inequity issue. But we also have to figure out how the different portals that we use in technology are kind of more aligned, because you got to have a different password for every different thing. You got to go through a different protocol in order to get online. I don't care what it's for. Everybody has their own way of doing it, and their ability to navigate all of those different systems is challenging. So we also need technology to help us to make it more commonly accessible. Just because you can use your mobile device doesn't mean that you can totally use your mobile device for everything that you need in technology.
Very well stated, Supervisor Carson. Let's give the panel a huge round of applause.
You know, it's been a really interesting morning for me. Really appreciated Deanna's presentation about the fact that we know things have changed, and we have some ideas that things are going to be different, but we don't exactly know how, and we don't exactly know what we need to do to get there. We're sort of feeling our way forward. And then we had our panel with our HR directors, Tami and Yvonne, showing us how things have changed and showing us the impact of changing aspect of our county situation, how we are going to interact with our workforce and what it's going to take to develop the workforce that we need to achieve our mission. And one of the things that I thought came out of that particularly interesting to me, obvious I think, and when we think about it, is that we have to confront a number of biases that we have about what it means to be an organization and how our organization is going to be structured and how it's going to be led. And the biases that we all hold to some extent or another are going to have to be worked through and revised and in many cases dropped. And you think about it, that's the very nature and the very crux of it, of making progress. So the goal in front of us is clear. What we need to accomplish is clear, and how we do it, we're still working through that together to try to figure it out. With Supervisor Carson's presentation, it became clear also that the public sector is not some completely divorced entity from the private sector, that we are in this together, as we will, that our workforces and our economic drivers do have profound effects one upon another. And so it's with that spirit of understanding the public-private relationship, shall we say, that we come to this next panel. The folks sitting to my left here are all friends of mine. I've known for a variety of times. And I've had the great pleasure of being deeply involved in the initiative that they're going to talk about this morning. And that is a family-friendly workplace accelerator. A lot of the stimulus, we're going to hear more details about this, but let me frame this because I just love this aspect of my job. A lot of the stimulus for this came from our First Five Commission. And it's been my pleasure to serve on that commission for 11 and a half years. I chaired it for I don't know, something like 4 or 5 of those years, and I call it my happy place, you know, whereas county government can be contentious, we can get people together and we want to do things for children. And one of the things we realized early on was childcare is an issue, and we're going to talk about that. And the wider issue then of a family-friendly workplace. It's something that's particularly meaningful to me as I was thinking about this particular panel. I was the beneficiary of family-friendly workplace policies almost 40 years ago in a place that you might think unlikely, which is Houston, Texas. I was in a research job there, and when my first son arrived, as his mother, my wife at the time, was getting ready to go back to work, we were working on how are we going to take care of this little being, who's not so little a being anymore, and he's also on the threshold of being 40 years old, which I can't quite process myself. But I went to our employer and said, look, I'd like to be part of this child's upbringing. And a long conversation in an oil exploration company in Texas, I ended up being able to flex my schedule to 2 afternoons a week off to be able to participate in my son's upbringing. And I can't tell you how important that was to me and what a difference it made, and how hard I worked for that company to be worthy of that. So I'd like to introduce the folks that are going to talk about family-friendly workplace in the 21st century. And I'll start in the order, I'll introduce them in the order that they're going to speak, and they have this all worked out. So I'm going to exit the stage while they talk, and I'll come back to help moderate some questions. We'll start on the far end of the table with Wendy Wendt, who is the Executive Director of the First Five Commission of San Luis Obispo County, and has been for, I don't know, 5 years now? Yeah.
Sorry, I told somebody the other day 6 years, and then I realized, no, it's 8. And there's, you know that pandemic accordion effect? Like
there's detail.
8 years.
The gentleman who is sitting next to me, or sitting as closer to me, is Mr. Jim Dantona, who's the president and CEO of the hippest Chamber of Commerce in America, ladies and gentlemen, the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. He's also a fellow Cayucas resident and a good friend. And in the middle, Miss Christina Lefevre Latner, who is the Workforce Development Manager for the Chamber and the real tip of the spear on the Family-Friendly Workplace Accelerator. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wendy and look forward to hearing this presentation.
Terrific. It's my honor to be here today at the CSAC meeting. I've heard so much from Supervisor Gibson about this organization, and it's just a real pleasure to be here with you all today. I also have the honor of getting to kick off this good news story after the gloom and doom of you prior presenters. We get to tell you a story of a best practice example called the Family Friendly Workplace Accelerator Program. This is a subject that has been near and dear to my heart for years now, both as a parent and then eventually as the executive director at First Five San Luis Obispo County, and ultimately as a colleague of these two wonderful folks to my right. But it's just this terrific example that we're about to unfold for you of a private-public collaboration that does a number of things. You're going to hear from us about how it helps business. You've been talking today about how to reimagine workforce relationships that help you in managing your business, which is county government. It supports working families. It's an initiative that nurtures healthy economies and communities. And yeah, it's great for kids, which is why I get to be on the stage here with you today. And you heard a little bit from Supervisor Gibson about First Five. I think most, if not all of you, have either heard of or been involved in First Five in your lifetimes. Just curious, besides Supervisor Gibson, are there any other either past or present First Five commissioners in the room? Hello, sir. Which county?
Riverside County for 7 years.
Wonderful. Any future wannabes, you don't have to raise your hand, but think about it. If you are a supervisor and would like to become part of this incredible Happy Place set of organizations, it's a network of agencies across the state of California. This is just a little primer for those of you who don't know First Five. Hopefully all of you do, but in case you don't, public agencies, each county has a First Five, First Five program that is networked in a statewide initiative that focuses attention on the lives and well-being of young children, prenatal to 5, and their families. We do our work in a number of different ways, but I try to distill it down into 3 types of work. We fund and invest in promising practices. We convene groups and organizations around challenging topics of the day that affect this population and that can't be harnessed or solved by one organization or one sector. First Five is often a table setter around common issues of concern. Keep that in mind because this plays into our story in just a second. And we also advocate and raise public awareness about issues that affect this demographic. So that is just in a short nutshell who we are. why this is an important age stage. I don't have to tell anyone who's ever been a parent why 0 to 5 is important. You know, Deanna, I came in partway through your presentation and it was just wonderful. I wished I'd been there from the beginning, so hopefully the whole thing was filmed. But I remember there was a slide toward the end of her presentation that said uncharted territory, and she had landing on the moon. You remember this slide? The first automobiles, right? Plane, it was plane, that's right. I knew it was transportation of some sort. And then there were these parents and a baby. And I thought, well, hot damn, what do you know? Parenthood, uncharted territory. I will also tell you that it's important to recognize, and I think I have a bullet point here, the why are we here? The uncharted territory is not just those parents, it's that child. And this is something we've intuitively known since the beginning of time, that a child's journey past the womb and into the world is that very thing, uncharted territory. We've known that intuitively. Science now backs us up. And we know that these first 5 years of life are the most critical when you're talking about the development of the human mind. 90% of a child's brain has been developed by the time she's 5. So keeping in mind all those conversations we've been having about the importance of taking care of our workforce and the work-life balance, it also, for me, is important for us also as employers and caretakers of and champions of our workforce, that we keep in mind that we are also taking care of their children, and we're helping them take care of their children at this critical stage of life, and at a time in this country where it's more expensive than ever before. 2 parents have to be in the workforce in order to make ends meet, especially in this community. As wonderful as it is, it's also expensive. And so this is where our participation in this conversation becomes relevant. Why would First 5 be involved in this kind of public-private partnership around family-friendly workplace policies, et cetera? This is, just wanted to home in on why we're at this table. As far as the specific story that leads us to the family-friendly workplace, that convening role I described a couple of minutes ago, when you take a problem that seems intractable within one sector and you build a bigger table and a bigger tent. The issue of the childcare crisis, which people since the pandemic have popularized as one of the most important things that we have to deal with, well, no surprise, it's been a crisis since long before the pandemic. And in 2019, I believe it was May of 2019, so a pretty prescient meeting was held here in San Luis Obispo County, and we entitled it, Where's the Care? And it was a day-long meeting. We actually had folks from a number of other counties, including Monterey County. I believe you're from Monterey County, sir? The city manager from... He is Monterey County. He is Monterey County. Well, another one of your colleagues who also is Monterey County, as far as I know, the city manager from Gonzales at the time, I'm forgetting his name. Yes, he was one of our keynote speakers. We had a representative from the Family Services Programs from Patagonia, Inc., talking about employer-sponsored childcare, and we had a room full of people from not just the education sectors, childcare sector, parents, and nonprofits, but also business and government, both local and state government, all in one room, identifying the problem around childcare and then trying to mobilize solutions. So we shifted from this concept of where's the care to an action-oriented movement that's been in motion ever since called We Are the Care. And there were 4 task forces that formed out of that effort. I won't go into the details on 3 of them, but the one that's most critical to the story that I'm teeing up for my colleagues here was a task force called the Cross-Sector Collaboration Task Force. And this is a kind of a scrappy group of both private sector employers, HR and executives and management, looking for ways to think about how they might provide childcare supports for their employees, and then also childcare operators interested in being innovative partners with business. And so this group came together and started to try to problem solve around how could they use the expertise from the early childhood educator side and the needs and the priorities around workforce development and attracting and retaining employees, how could they band together and design a better way? And one of the first things I remember, one of the folks on that task force who was, I believe, from MindBody, which is a big local employer, she said, you know, childcare is certainly the holy grail when you talk about what we'd like to be able to provide our employees, and boy, is it expensive to do that. And it's fraught with regulations and permitting, and it's hard for an employer to take that on their own shoulders. But there's so many other things we could be doing that are under that definition of family friendly. Why don't we start there? And so this task force, this cross-sector collaboration task force, started to noodle around with this concept of family-friendly workplace ideas, policies, practices, culture. How do we get this more into the vernacular of our local business community, business with a small b, so private sector, public sector, nonprofit as well. And we started to tinker with this family-friendly workplace toolkit. So I'm going to put a pause on that because I don't want to steal the thunder of my colleagues around what happened next. But the other thing I wanted to share was a parallel track relationship that was forming between First Five and the SLO Chamber of Commerce, which is another wonderful story. About, I want to say 4 years ago, but you're going to tell me it was 6 years ago, right? The accordion. The Chamber of Commerce was reworking its economic vision statement. And First Five staff and a lot of community members, including First Five, were asked to provide input into this economic vision statement. So my staff and I sat down one day, and I think you were working with us at the time, and we went through and we read the entire draft. And I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit, Jim. In the gloom and doom way, we found very little in the way of references to children and families. There was a lot about open space and environment and clean air and, you know, doers and dreamers and economic vitality, and very little around children and families. So we red-penned that whole thing and inserted our perspectives on children and families, and they took almost all of our recommendations, and that there began this blossoming of a conversation between First Five and the Chamber and others interested in the issues that intersect the world of commerce and the world of family and children. And eventually I ended up getting snagged for the board of directors, since that time, there have also been a number of committees that have dedicated time to studying the issue of childcare in particular as it relates to economic health or the opposite, disease in our community. And so we've been working on it ever since. And then fast forward to an opportunity to create this really wonderful new effort, which Christina will tell you about in just a few minutes. But before that, I believe that Jim is going to give us a little more background from the Chamber of Commerce side of things.
Well, thank you, Wendy. And yes, it was 6 years ago, very good, and we were doing the economic vision. The best news, I wasn't here yet. So it was somebody else's fault why I didn't have anything about children and families. So I'm good with that. But what I would say also, in one of the pieces I want to bring up here is, you know, why is private sector here talking to CSAC? I mean, we'll hopefully tie all this together, but the first piece at the end, we'll have it all to come together, but first piece is we really see our county, Supervisor Gibson, Supervisor Ortiz-Leg, the staff of the county as great partners, and we have to be working together to grow our economy. That's automatic. It's a key piece. And additionally, we're also your competition, right? So in looking how this goes, we really want to talk about how this works for everyone, because we are a small county, 280,000 total people. I spent 15 years in the city of Los Angeles government. We had 4 million people, and one district that I helped represent was 280,000 people. So you really have to maximize your assets available to you unless you have 10 million people like the county of Los Angeles, right? So when I first got here in 2019, I I don't have any kids. My wife and I tapped out on that. We're so happy to be aunt and uncle to some wonderful children. But I had never heard this before because I was in Los Angeles, how bad the child care issue was in this community. And this just came out of a recent study. It was part of the first 5 that depending on the level of care, what size you need, you were averaging $6,000 to $15,000 per year per child to get care here, whether you were in our North County, the city of SLO, South County, North Coast. We have to break it up, pretty big county with not a lot of people in it. And so what became clear in our conversations, people were paying as much for childcare as they were their house or their rent, which was insanity. Like, you couldn't do that. And so you ended up with this question like, are you literally working just to provide childcare? And if you're doing that, why do that, right? Like, you could just leave, stay home, and save money and not get taxed on money that you're paying to somebody else, right? It's all a bad plan, and all it does is set up the discussion to stay home. And we notice, as much as we really want to say, like, we are working towards equality, that is absolutely not the case, and we saw it so clearly when the pandemic came. Women bore the brunt of this issue of having to be the ones that left the workplace, even when they were the primary breadwinner. This, you can't see really well, I apologize about that, but this shows from a spot here in February 2020, the unemployment level for women was 3.1%. Fast forward all the way to January 2022, we are still at 0.5% higher. And this is utilizing the federal government's normal unemployment rate. So that 0.5% represents a huge number, 1.5 million women nationally that aren't in the workplace, that want to be. When we do the bigger question on the U6 data, which is anybody who could work, that number is more like 6 or 7%. So we have a structural problem, and as business, we had to go figure out what was happening and how were we going to, especially with 280,000 people, total people in our county, we have to maximize every asset in order to be successful. And so when the pandemic hit, one of the first things you see, we look at, this is the US population by share, baby boomers at 70.4 million as a population. When the pandemic hit, they went, yeah, we're done. We're out. We're leaving the workforce. We're not waiting through 2 more years. We are good. And what we heard on the last ad is like 55 to 64 are just on their way to being done. Well, I'm a Gen Xer. We are structurally, you look at the number of people, 5 million short in that population, just if all of us replaced baby boomers, already 5 million down. And then you start to get to the next level, like millennials will start to fill that in, but that's going to take a little while, and Gen Z is just getting out of high school and getting to college, maybe just leaving college. So structurally, there is a problem that we're going to have to deal with. And so there isn't going to be, as I think Tami and put in the last one, a return to normal. People who have retired may come back, but not likely. As of May, 11.5 million job opportunities in this country. That is double, nearly double the amount of people available to work. So you will not figure that problem out. There's no way to somehow clone, well, there probably is a way to clone, but let's not go there. let's not go there. That's a whole separate panel we can work on. And you look at labor force participation, 62.2%, and that's actually come up a touch, but overall, the number is going down. We're just having less people participate in the labor force. Again, why is that? Yeah, and we definitely went back to this question of the family-friendly workplace, that there are issues that you have to deal with, whether it's our aging parents, whether it's our children. It has to be about more than you need to come to work and earn a living, right? There's other things that we have to consider as an employer. And that's where you and I and the private sector, public sector are all in on this on the same page. I did see the peak labor force was participation was in 1998 at 67%. So it actually, one would have thought it was higher, but it really wasn't. Go back to like 1950, and of course the issue was women weren't in the workforce primarily. Well, as Wendy, as you said, white women weren't in the workforce back then, but males were high. But since 1998, we've been on a slope down to people coming out. And so as I said, the U3 rate that the government uses to say, hey, this is how much unemployment is, doesn't count everybody. And we really need to look at that U6 statistic, which is actually about 3.5% higher. So nationally, about 7.1. Crazy, and we just hit a record low unemployment here in SLO County at 2.1%. That was literally like, I think, 3,000 people available. And when you get to that level, sometimes the jobs don't match the people, right? We are completely at full employment. So every person that's here that wants to work or that is sitting on the sideline because they just cannot do what, they can't make it work for their family economically, financially, we've got to maximize. And so that is where this conversation that Wendy was talking about started of what can we do? Is it all about childcare? And the answer turned out to be no, that there are a ton of things. And so we partnered with First Five. They put some money in, the county put money in, and we are leading a charge out to the private sector. But overall, anybody who wants to learn about how you can do things better and make them more efficient for your job. So I will then we had a chance to hire this position, and the person who happened to be working on a lot of this in the background anyways was like, I'll do it. And we're like, that sounds like a great idea. And so we hired Christina Lefevre, Latner to do this and work throughout, not just chamber members, the whole county to make this work. This is beyond the chamber. This is for the good of our county. And so Christina has been going out and about helping our people understand. So I'll let you, Christina, take it on to the next level.
Great. Thank you so much for having us here today. This is, I might want to have to say that this is the best meeting I've ever been at. Never before have what I'm going to talk to you about been teed up so perfectly. I want to do this every single time I have a presentation, have you all come with me. Also, the other thing is I'm kind of the poster child for all the things that you're talking about. So I actually used to work for the county of SLO when we first moved here about 15 years ago, and was in my position for about 5 years, loved it. And then I had a child and needed more flexibility. And at that point in time, there was not a lot of talk about offering flexibility to employees. And so left that position, was really fortunate enough to be able to go back to school and get a master's in public policy at Cal Poly. A lot of people aren't able to do that. And then have basically been consulting with organizations like First Five since then, and working at Cal Poly. I also teach a part-time women's and gender studies there. So had a lot of wonderful conversations around this with my students and what their needs are and why their choices for majors were. And so that really kind of brought me into the fold. So while this position is new for me, what we're talking about is not, because I've been working with Wendy on this for some time, and I have they're not so young anymore, but when we first started having these conversations, they were pretty young, 2 young children. And I also have an aging parent at home. So I just want to say that if it wasn't for the fact that the chamber was willing to be flexible with me, I wouldn't have been able to take this position. So I'd still be doing some part-time work and taking on consulting. So hats off to the chamber for being family friendly. But what you probably really want to know about is about this program, the Family Friendly Workplace Accelerator Program. And so the point of the program really is, has been talked about here, is really to provide resources and support to businesses, all businesses throughout the county, and it's all free of charge. So you don't have to be a chamber member. I will speak to everyone. I tell people that I live at the SLO Chamber, but I belong to pretty much everyone. So yeah, and and with that, what I've been doing mostly, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, is I really just work to help businesses attract and sustain a strong, inclusive workforce through the implementation of family-friendly workplace policies. And we're so lucky to be able to have this. Wendy and I dreamed of a day when this might be possible, and so happy that it's funded by the County of SLO and First Five. So, where am I going here? So you might be asking at this point, we've talked a lot about this, but what does family-friendly mean? When I talk to businesses, the first thing they often say to me is like, I can't have all my employees be flexible, or work from home, or we don't have the money to build a daycare center on site. And that's okay, because family-friendly means really so many different things. Family-friendly policies, they act to meet directly or indirectly the needs of children, parents, disabled family members, and the oldest generation. It's not something we talk about as much of. We talk so much about the need for childcare, but there's only one adult day center in the entire county here. So trying to take care of our older adults is also incredibly difficult. A lot of people might be like me, as I just mentioned. I'm part of that sandwich generation where I'm taking care of both young kids and also older adults too, and it can be really challenging. So what is a family-friendly workplace? So a family-friendly workplace is one whose practices, and we talk a lot about policies, but I'm okay with people just practicing these things. It doesn't need to be written down in paper, although it is better if it can be. So, and whose practices make it possible for employees to more easily balance family and work. We call these policies all family friendly, and yet these policies are really been shown to be great for everyone. You don't have to have a family in order to benefit and appreciate having some flexibility in your work schedule. So why do we need family-friendly employers? So increasing family friendliness is really essential to support business success, to advance diversity. We've already talked a little bit about the importance of diversity here in these conversations, equity, and also inclusion in the workforce, and to continue to grow our economy. We've had several reports that have been out here in SLO County that have shown how many millions of dollars that could be added to our economy if all the people who wanted to work were able to work. So why should businesses be family friendly? So by supporting working parents, businesses can maximize employee productivity, they can increase loyalty and morale, increase employee retention, increase the effectiveness of recruitment efforts. I talk to a lot of businesses about that right now with the labor shortage, and allow employees to improve their economic status and their quality of life. We just talked about the high cost of childcare. It's about the same in our county as the cost for a tuition at Cal Poly for the year, which is just crazy. So employees who feel that their family responsibilities are valued by their employer are less stressed, more successful in balancing work and family life. They are more loyal and committed to their employers. They are more satisfied with their jobs and more likely to want to remain in their current positions. So what are some family-friendly policies, some family-friendly workplace policies? And we've talked about a lot of them today. The keynote speaker did a great job of talking about the importance of flexibility and scheduling. So what I talk to my businesses about is that this is not a one-size-all solution. For every industry, for every business, there are different needs, and there's a policy that will work. So when we talk about things like flexibility and scheduling, flexible work and scheduling, these are my favorite because many of these policies cost very little or nothing to implement and can actually save employers money. They might not need as much workspace. They can save on resources as well. And this is a great way for employers to be able to save money. So this category includes things like flex time, working from home, telecommuting, which has become, with the pandemic, something that so many places are doing. And I'm really encouraging a lot of businesses to keep this in some form or other. So job sharing is another one, part-time work. I think the county talked about switching to lower hours or part-time work for some of their employees. Compressed work weeks. I keep pushing for a 32-hour week. At the chamber, there's great studies around that, and I just had to mention it because Jim hates it. So there we go. Core hours. Core hours, and one that is really important for businesses that are not office environments. So organizations like retail, hospitality, a lot of production facilities, I have a lot of those. And some that have all those things. We've been working with a winery, Tolosa Winery. They've been honored for being family friendly. And they do a little bit of different things for everyone. They switched to a 980 schedule for their production staff. Their office staff gets to do remote or flex time. And they have stable and predictable schedules for their tasting room staff. So there is something that will fit just about everyone. Paid and unpaid leave. These can include things like parental leave, sick leave, family and medical leave. A lot of people don't realize that there are a large portion of the public that don't even fall under being able to have paid family leave, or I'm sorry, unpaid family leave, medical leave. So an important thing to be able to offer. Childcare is one of the greatest needs based on the data that we have. We've talked about this a lot here, but this doesn't just mean establishing on-site or near-site daycare. It's great if you can, but as we've talked about, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I think a lot of these measures are ways that we can decrease some of the pressure on the childcare industry. So it can mean offering things like subsidies or reimbursement for care, employer-provided backup childcare for emergency situations, dependent spending accounts, which are similar to flex time or flexible spending accounts, and even just offering childcare resources or referral. Health benefits, you're probably pretty familiar with those. Flexible spending accounts, certainly a lot of public entities offer those. Health insurance, wellness benefits, flexible spending accounts, all of these things are featured here. And then the last category that I talk to a lot of businesses about are around accommodations and support. And this category, it includes additional support for pregnant, breastfeeding mothers, such as lactation support, and then also new parents. So we have expectant and new parent parking under this category. Infants at work, which is one of my favorite things that I try and talk people into, because if we can let those babies be at work, maybe not all the time or sometime, again, that's a spot we're saving in a child care center. And then caregiver support groups, in-house resources and referral. There are a lot of different things that can be done here. So this really is just a handful of the possibilities. If you want to know a little bit more and do a little bit exploring, as Wendy had mentioned, we've put together, one of the first things we did was put together a family-friendly workplace toolkit. And within there's tons of information on different policies, even policy templates, lots of data and research, and you can find that at our website, which is slowfamilyfriendlywork.org. And I'm happy to share that with you again if you missed it. And that'll offer you a lot of ideas and tools.
Family friendly work, or is it family work?
Slowfamilyfriendlywork.org.
Okay, please.
Is it not there?
Yeah,
okay, I'm sorry.
Add friendly there.
Yeah,
Family-friendlywork.
slowfamilyfriendlywork.org. So, and then kind of last in wrapping this up is you can have as many policies on the books as I might want or someone else might want, but if people don't feel comfortable using these policies and approaching people, there's supervisors for them. If there's stigma around maybe taking maternity leave or paternity leave especially, we hear a lot about that, then it's just not going to work and it's not going to do anybody any good. So one of the most important things that we talk about is really creating a family-friendly environment where everyone is on board with these, from leadership down to your employees. So a very important thing there. There you go. So just, and then just quickly, I wanted to talk to you about how we've been implementing this program. I've talked to you a lot about the why, what it means, what the family-friendly policies are. So the Family-Friendly Workplace Accelerator Program, we've been implementing it, really kind of right from the start, we got a lot of attention around it. My first week, thank gosh that I'd already been doing this before, we had it seem like every media outlet wanting to talk to us. So we've gotten a lot of media attention, which has been providing a lot of education. I've been doing a lot of presentations like this to organizations. We've even talked to the Santa Maria Chamber of Commerce, REACH, which is a local regional organization for economic development, Cal Poly, we've talked to, the Board of Supervisors, I've talked with city council members, really kind of anybody who will allow me to talk to them and listen. So, and luckily there have been a lot of those. So, and then one of the most important things I've been doing is really connecting with big businesses, organizations, and people. Organizations that contacted me, me contacting different businesses and organizations. I've talked with all of the chambers in the county and really just getting the word out about this program and what we have to offer. And providing things like education. I've been doing a lot of experience gathering, so really kind of listening to businesses who are already implementing these policies to hear about how they work for them, what have been the benefits, what are some of the barriers, and also asking them to mentor other businesses. So we have a large handful of those that are willing to step in because they really understand the importance of these policies. And then I've been creating some tools. So some of my favorite things that we've created is the toolkit, which has already been around, and I'm so happy to be able to be a person now that can answer questions about the toolkit, because when we created it years ago, we kept saying, who can answer these questions if somebody wants to do this? And I'm so happy that now I'm in a position where I can do that. So I've created an assessment, which has been really helpful to a lot of businesses. It's a great tool. And I think that someone talked about earlier about the importance of surveying your employees and actually finding out what they need. So that's been something I've been working on recently too. And then probably the thing that is my favorite that I've done is rewarding family-friendly organizations. So I might say that this is, pardon the pun, the most rewarding aspect of this job so far in the work that I've done. And with that, we have partnering with First Five. Again, they have a campaign, Hands on Heroes, and this year's campaign is called Hands on Heroes at Work. And every month we highlight a business or organization that is promoting, offering, I'm really doing a great job carrying out some sort of policy. So when you see some of the examples here of some of those businesses. So, and then lastly, we have just created a new award. So the San Luis Obispo County Family Friendly Workplaces Award. We even have a logo and a little seal. And this award is really meant to both encourage, recognize, and support businesses that are adopting family-friendly policies. So the award goes across all these different policy areas, family-friendly areas that I've already talked with you about, and it has been incredibly well received, and already at this point it's only been launched for about a month or so, and we've had about 30 businesses who have opted to be recognized for one of these awards. So, and it's been really very exciting, and it's a great way for me to be able to get the word out, encourage, and recognize these businesses. So, and then lastly,
let me just say real quick, in doing that specific piece, we've already seen employers who get more applications because they have this. Like, people businesses were struggling to find applicants. They put this on their site, they got applicants the next day, hired 3 or 4 people. It was amazing. So I just want to say it's been really incredible and like shocking that people are looking for that specifically.
Yeah, and you know, and part of realizing that that we needed to do something like this to help businesses with recruitment was that me even just doing a simple Google search, coming up and realizing that a lot of businesses that I knew were family friendly didn't actually say anything on their websites about the fact they were family friendly. And I know for myself that's something that I've looked for. And so I think that we can get far more people into the workforce who think that they might not be able to if we have more people advertising that they have these family-friendly policies. And then lastly, I just want to wrap up with kind of talking about where I'm going with this, like what we're going to be doing next. We have a workshop coming up next week. It's going to be done like speed dating, where we have a bunch of experts in business who are enacting these policies and just letting people talk to them and ask questions. So we're really looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking with other chambers, taking my show on the road a little bit, doing more individual support, especially with a lot of these businesses who have approached us about the award, getting them to an even higher level, so more recognition there, and then targeting some of the agricultural and hospitality businesses where they definitely feel like it's a little bit more of a barrier to enact some of these policies, and really just making connections. So thank you so much for allowing us to be here, and I'm going to pass it back off to Wendy.
Okay, if you want to give me the last slide. I can't emphasize enough, for those of you who are in San Luis Obispo County, take advantage of that Insight Studio next Tuesday. If you go to slowchamber.org, is that right? And click on the Insight Studio button, there are still spaces available. It's going to be terrific. This last slide, I'm realizing the font's a little small, I apologize, could be a whole hour-long conversation in and of itself. But I'll just tee it up for your consideration, and maybe it can be a lunchtime chat topic, and that is what is or could be the county's role in all of this, what we've just been discussing. And I think the bulk of the conversation for today's meeting is focused on this first notion of counties as role models for family-friendly practices. Everything that you've been discussing and hearing this morning up until this point has been focused on how are counties able to attract and retain talent through their innovative HR policies, practices. I put another bullet down just as a kind of a thought experiment. One really bold way that counties might consider walking the walk is to look at possibilities around offering childcare for their own employees. And there are some counties in this state that do that. So the concept of joint facilities with other public sectors, agencies, or partners in the community might be an example. The other big category that I think of when I think of the role that counties play in this work is as economic engine stimulators. This isn't just about attracting and retaining your own people, it's about mobilizing and facilitating system-level change that helps unlock potential county-wide. And so in that category, you have opportunities to do things like invest in the Family-Friendly Workplace Accelerator Program, which in San Luis Obispo County has already happened. That's a really low bar. That was a very well spent, not so much money to get some really exciting things going, as Christina and Jim have described. And then in the bigger bucket, you have the opportunity to be shapers of policy around things like general plan, language and focus that includes childcare, reference to early childhood development, family-friendly kinds of language. Here in San Luis Obispo County of San Luis Obispo, the most recent update of our housing element now includes a reference to childcare, which is really exciting, and that can be also proliferated out in other elements of general plans, including things like the health element, land use element, et cetera. So keep that in mind. And then there's a whole category of conversation we can have about things like land use, zoning, permitting, and I mentioned housing policy as well, incentives for developers to include childcare licensable spaces, for example, so that families who are trying to move into affordable housing or any housing for that matter, have proximity to licensed quality childcare. I could go on this last slide, but I'm going to stop now so we have at least time for maybe one question. If from no one else, then perhaps you, Bruce.
Thank you. Let me cede to yield to. Is there a question from the audience? Just shout it out if there is. If you're thinking about one, let me tell you, this is one of the most exciting conversations that's going on in this county right now. And Wendy will remember, we had a First Five meeting yesterday where we talked about a theory of change as we seek to evaluate big new ideas that First Five is trying to push forward. And it was a dense chart that was presented. But what I remember in terms of near-term, short-term outcomes was the need to develop networks and the need to develop expectations in a community as regards how we are going to see this change manifest itself. And that's where we are with this right now. There is an exciting conversation going on in the public and the private sector. We're further work to do specifically on childcare, where funding has been put in to really analyze the potential by the county, the city of San Luis Obispo has put it in, our biggest school district, and Cal Poly, each $20,000 to facilitate a study of how we can move this forward. So with that, Mr. Dantona.
And Mr. Supervisor, yeah, I would just say that, because we have CAOs in the room and those who advise, I would say for these key pieces, it's key that government starts to spur the conversation with some initial seed economic investment, and it doesn't have to be much, and I know budgets are not in great places, but when you can take a little bit of money and get it going, you can sometimes make it easy for the private sector to get it rolling. They just are so busy doing this work that they don't have this opportunity. So I would say 100%, if you have the opportunity, find ways to invest in that, both at the child care level and on this idea of finding new and interesting ways to get a workforce going, because that'll just generate more taxes, more revenues long term.
Wendy, one more thing.
I just remembered something else I wanted to tell you all, and what you just asked and Jim was talking about reminded me. We would like to think that we were the first in the state of California to come up with this sort of partnership. That is not the case. We owed a huge debt of gratitude to First Five Sonoma County and the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber of Commerce. They had this idea first. We shamelessly stole it from them, and they actually were incredibly helpful in giving us advice on how to mobilize this program. So Sonoma County, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to.
Indeed. And a debt of gratitude to the panel that we've just heard. We appreciate it.
I'm Chuck Washington, Riverside County Supervisor and first VP for CSAC. And if you're like me, I thoroughly enjoyed the panel discussions we've been having. I like Ms. Potter's comments about the workforce of the future, hybrid working. And I think she was talking to us as leaders and managers, but I was finding myself hearing her remarks more as a county employee, and actually thinking now how I didn't like being isolated at home all the time, but I don't want to go back to what I was doing before, driving into Riverside every day. I like something kind of a hybrid. There's some meetings we can do that are virtual, and I'm going to be happy to do that. Another thing that we saw in our family that increased and actually improved my quality of life. And if anyone in here is a grandparent, you'll know what I'm talking about. When you're a parent, kids are just part of the crew and they're along for the ride. When you get grandkids, all of a sudden you start paying attention to what the heck they're doing, right? And so I'm getting to live the lives of the 10-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 2-year-old, and I'm getting to participate in a sort of co-parenting activity in our family, which only became sort of available to me in this hybrid work environment. And I'd say it's improved my quality of life as well. So I think there are great changes coming for us in the workplace. I'm still trying to figure out how to understand the mind of a Gen Zer. I have a staff of 8 because I'm an urban county supervisor and I have a large district. I have a millennial daughter who's on the older end. I get her. because she's more like me as a baby boomer. I actually have a deputy chief of staff who's on the young end of millennials at 27. She is more like me. The Gen Zers that are in my office, I have 2 of them. And I'm not sure what it is they want out of work. I'm not sure that they necessarily appreciate that the county job they have comes with a pension, or that they even appreciate the healthcare benefits. I know for a fact that they don't appreciate the 5 weeks of vacation that they get. One of them recently said, well, I can't afford to go on a vacation. And I said, well, sell a couple weeks of your vacation time and use that to pay for your vacation. Well, who would I go with? Okay. And so I'm kind of stuck. I'm trying to find my way forward with how we manage the new workforce as it shapes. But I'm really excited about this millennial group that wants to work, to move forward, to understand the benefits of some of those benefits. And I think they're getting that. And my hope is that they will connect to the Gen Zers. One of my Gen Zers, who's right on the oldest age segment of Gen Zer, she told me, and it was similar to what my daughter said about being a millennial. She doesn't like being a millennial. She's right at the front end of that. This Gen Zer says to me, I hate being a Gen Zer. I wish I was a millennial. Why is that? Because Gen Zers, all they ever want to do is dance and create TikTok videos. Oh, well, I have one of those as a grandchild. I know what you're talking about. We learned about a number of issues through that last panel discussion. Our next speakers will explore additional partnership opportunities for counties to maximize workforce success. They're here today to help us understand the opportunities that we might not be aware of to address unique local needs for each county. Housing is an issue, especially for those who are just entering the workforce. And each of our panelists will touch on many of these challenges. And we're joined today by, and I have 3 names here, so someone's missing. Are they still out at lunch? Oh, she's on virtual. Ah, looking over my shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. First, we have Ms. Rosa Barragan, who's the director of the Merced County Office of Education. We also have Ms. Cathy Barna, who's the executive director of the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. And we have Ms. Christina Valdivia, who serves as the Chief Communications and External Affairs Officer for Cal Volunteers, a state department with which CSAC often partners. I'd like to thank them for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing how counties can work with all kinds of partners to maximize workforce success. I'll start with Ms. Barragan. Would you like to kick it off?
Sure will. Well, good afternoon. There you go. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I've learned so much today and so much that I can take back to our county and especially our County Office of Education. So what I'm going to talk about today is childcare. That's my field. I've been working in childcare for over 20 years. I've had the privilege of implementing several programs that support our children, our family childcare providers, but overall is our families. I'm also the proud mom of 3 wonderful boys who are now all school aged. So today, instead of providing a whole lot of data to you, I'm going to share a little bit about my experience as a working mom and the administrator of several childcare programs in Merced County. And I'm going to do that by going back a little bit to, not a little bit, actually it's 2 decades when I first became a parent. So right out of school, I landed this wonderful job as working with childcare providers and providing childcare referrals to families. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. At that time, and I'm aging myself, the minimum wage was $5.25. Yes, right? Believe it or not. and I was getting paid $12 an hour. So as you can imagine, I was doing well, right? And I bought my house, I had my car, everything was going as planned. And then here comes my first baby. It changed everything, and I mean everything. I went from now needing childcare and having to think of how am I going to afford this? Even at making $12 an hour, which was a lot at that time, believe it or not, it would have costed me 26% of my income. And that was me doing the math using my gross income at the time to be able to afford childcare. So there was a lot of decisions. It was, even if I would have been able to afford childcare, I had to, had some of the struggles that we're currently facing right now. It's like, is there enough high quality childcare for me to take my baby to? And as a parent, you know that that's your precious baby. You need to be able to trust the person that you're leaving that child with. So that was one of the struggles. The other one is, of course, high quality childcare. And was this childcare provider close to my home? So it was a lot of questions that as a young parent came to mind. So fortunate for me, my mom came to the rescue. My mom was able to stop working and moved in with me. She started taking care of my son, which was the best decision ever. As I see it. I don't know if she thinks it's the same way for her, but it was great. But the reality, when we think about all our families, or the majority of our families who we currently work with right now, that's not a reality for them. Many don't have a mom who's able or even willing to stay home to take care of their child. Many of them are having to make those sacrifices to say, I need to stay home. If you're a two-parent household, you're having to say make the decision to say one of us is going to have to stay home because we can't afford childcare. Back then, like I said, it was 26%. Now, maybe it's a little less, and this is 20 years later. So we're still seeing some of the struggles that some of the parents had 20 years ago. There's still some of the struggles now. When you think of some of the things that, I think it was Wendy from First Five, when she said, this is not new to us. We've known that childcare is a very important part of, our community. We see childcare as a very important part of our infrastructure. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's seen in many counties. Childcare providers are sometimes seen as babysitters, and they're not. Many of them are highly, qualified professionals, especially now in a world where, there's been so much research about the importance of the first 5 years. So we have some high demands for our childcare providers now, right? Some of them are having to go back to school to get their AA or get their BA in child development to be able to work with our children and prepare them to go to school and prepare them for life. So, so when you think of childcare, one of the things that I ask our, Board of Supervisors or you all here as a community is to really consider the work that our childcare providers are doing. Many of our childcare providers are small businesses. So they contribute, right, to our economy. For example, in Merced County, which is a small county, it's a good sized county, if you ask me. We have about 200 childcare providers, licensed childcare providers. We haven't recovered from the 2008 recession when we had twice as many family childcare providers. And why might that be? As you might be asking yourselves, well, that's because they're not making enough to be able to keep their doors open. So one of the things that we're doing in Merced County is we're building lots of partnerships. We understand that right now we can't work in silos anymore. We need to go out and talk to for example, UC Merced. We're partnering with UC Merced, the Merced Union High School District. We're partnering with First Five in order to bring in more childcare providers. That supply needs to be there in order for our families to be able to work. So, and I know I was talking to a gentleman who said, well, what is it? What's the answer? Where is this workforce? Well, some of them are young parents who, again, are having to make that decision that we don't want to leave our children with just anyone. And then with those that can do have a childcare provider, they're in the workforce. So some of the things that that I would like you to consider is, partnering with your communities, partnering with your local child care resource and referral, partnering with your local child care planning council, your county office of ed, but really having those conversations about the importance of child care. Child care is not babysitting, like many people would think. Child care is a legitimate business that's bringing income into the economy. Just to put it in perspective, the Merced County Office of Education this year, our early education department is administering over 30 million in childcare. So that's to prepare childcare providers as well as to pay childcare subsidies. So if you do the math, and they always say it's a times 7, that's a lot of money that's coming into our county that can be used, that is needed, that can be used, but it's real and it's there. So I'm a little nervous, so thank you for your patience. And then to top it off, just on a side note, this morning when I was putting on my contacts, one of them went down the sink. So if you see me kind of winking, it's not that I'm winking at you, it's I'm trying to focus. So like I said, partnerships are very important. We need to continue to partner with each other, but I continue to ask, let's support the rate reform for childcare providers. I know that I started saying, I can't afford childcare, but we also need our childcare providers to stay open. So those of you that have connections with your legislatures, your state senators, please make sure to continue to support the rate reform because it is needed. And then also consider some ways where you can help support our families who are currently in need of subsidized childcare that cannot qualify for our subsidy program. So we're not asking that you do it by yourself. We're asking for us to come together and partner to make it happen. So there you go.
Thank you, Rosa. Outstanding points you made, and sorry if we made you feel a little nervous, but you raised some great points. I know for us in Riverside County, we have been designated as a quality child care desert. I'm sure we're not the only county in the state that is a designation for, because it just describes a lack of really quality child care. And proud of my board, last year's budget, we allocated, and I don't remember the exact number, but multiple millions of dollars to sort of try to bridge the gap while we wait on this rate reform, which is very crucial and important. So thank you for raising that point.
Yes, thank you. And I know, for example, at the Central Valley Fresno County, a shout out to Fresno because they are doing a direct investment in childcare.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is buying us some time, right?
Yes.
It's not a permanent
No.
fix. So, yeah. Next, we have Cathy Barna. Cathy, the floor is yours.
I am the executive director of CSCDA, which is a statewide financing authority. And I thank you for inviting me to talk today because I'm going to talk about an issue that is very important, especially for childcare providers. Where do they live? And what housing solutions do you have available to you that we could facilitate? And that's what CSCDA does. CSCDA is sort of a bridge between the public and the private sector. And we were established in 1988 by CSAC and the League of California Cities. It was really at the initiation of two guys out of Alameda County who hung their own shingle and became financial advisors. Susan and Keith know them well, Jerry Burke and Steve Hamill. Jerry wanted to do industrial development bonds, which are private activity bonds. We don't do those anymore, but that's really why CSCDA was started. And so it's meetings like this where new ideas come together. And now CSCDA is huge. We have over 530 county, city, and special district members, and we facilitate the issuance of private activity bonds for our members with your permission, and we facilitate that. So we bring private sector ideas that are to issue bonds and finance projects. We are the largest conduit bond issuer in the nation. We've issued more than $70 billion of bonds. So starting with $1.5 million industrial development bond back in 1988, now we have over 70 billion in bonds under our belt. So Private activity bonds, that's primarily what we do. About 90% of the bonds that we issue are private activity bonds. So we're issuing tax-exempt bonds that for private entities that are permitted under federal tax law. The other 10% are tax-exempt bonds that are local government bonds. But most of what we do are private activity bonds. The local government doesn't pledge their credit. The interest is tax-exempt. And they're issued by CSCDA, or there are a couple of other statewide joint powers authorities that issue bonds too. Next, affordable housing. This is one of the arrows in our quiver that you should be aware of. I've asked staff actually to develop a statewide map of where we have done affordable housing, because we have done so much and you may not even know that it's in your community. So I'd love to say, oh, here are the projects that we have financed that are in your community. But anyway, we'll work on that. So we do low to moderate income multifamily housing, senior housing, new construction or the rehabilitation of existing facilities. And the tenant income, at least 20% of the project must be income restricted. Almost all of our bonds, all of our projects are 100% rent restricted to 30 to 60% of AMI. And in some areas, like San Diego County, 60% of AMI is a pretty good income. My son's in that category right now in San Diego County. So, and he's a graduate from a very prestigious university. So, you know, low income housing, low moderate income housing it's my children, and it's also the carers of our children. So if they're all subject to state, this is stuff that isn't so interesting. Oh, what you can do for affordable housing, because it's so hard to get these projects done now. They're subject to state volume cap. CSCDA does that for you. We run it through the state, but we need tax credits typically, developer contributions, local government loans. So to the extent that you have monies that are earmarked for housing, you can make loans for these low-income housing projects, and that's where you can really, really help. CSCDA has issued $25 billion in affordable housing, 900 projects, 100,000 units are out there that are rent restricted. So this is good stuff. Oh, that was the next slide. Here we go. I'm not so good. You know, I can't rub my belly and top my head. Here's some examples. This is Legacy Square in Santa Ana. Yeah, you remind me if I didn't advance the slide, okay? But look at this. Does that look like low-income housing? I don't think so. 100% rent restricted to 30 to 60% of area median income. Here is the Gateway project in Millbrae, 35 million in bonds for 80 apartments, 100% rent restricted, also 30 to 60% of AMI. Now look at this one. I'd like to move here. 20 million in bonds for 75 apartments, 100% rent restricted to 60% of AMI. This is in San Juan Capistrano. I mean, it's some of this stock is really, really beautiful. And then we have other projects that are for extremely low income, and that's 100% restricted to 30%. That doesn't look so good, but it's really providing a great service to our communities. So we have, we really run the gamut. We have provided housing for the unhoused, workforce housing. That's our newest program, thanks to the efforts of Alan Fernandez, who really helped us get that started. We do infrastructure, finance, and commercial PACE. I'm going to tell you a little bit about New Markets tax credits. We have only done one housing project through New Markets tax credits, but it was a project in, I'll just skip to that now, project in Chico. In the aftermath of the Camp Fire, they had a lot of unhoused people in Chico that came out of Paradise. And so we actually gave them an investment of $8.5 million. It's really a grant, New Markets tax credits, and they built this facility for the unhoused. So CSCDA is doing everything from actually single family housing. We even have programs, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's start with the unhoused. And so new markets tax credits, they have to be in an enterprise zone where they're severely distressed, but these zones are up and down the state. So to the extent that you have a project that is in big need, let us know and we may have some money for you. Workforce housing. This is, I think, really why I was invited to talk today, but I wanted to tell you about all these other things because this is really a think tank. We're here together. We're talking about, the new workforce ideas, hybrid working, and it's from gatherings like this where we can put our heads together and come up with new ideas. So in about actually 2019, maybe as early as 2018, the idea of providing income restricted housing for the missing middle. The missing middle are folks that are earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income. And we have low income housing, we have very low income housing, we have moderate income housing, but this missing middle, we really didn't have anything. And so this program was pioneered really by the private sector, and it was brought to us. We needed to establish a separate entity that is to sort of put the risk over into another entity, CSCDA, which is the parent organization. We established CSCDA Community Improvement Authority, CIA. We just call it CIA. And what we did over the course of about 16 months, doesn't work anymore, and I'll tell you why. But over a very quick period, every agenda, my board was meeting, and we had multiple big issues where we acquired existing housing, a lot of beautiful new buildings, big buildings mostly in the urban area. We actually own it. CIA owns this property. We issued tax exempt bonds, governmental bonds, because it's rent restricted. And we have converted 7,700 units into workforce housing to the tune of about $3.5–4 billion in bonds issued over a very quick period. We looked at this so carefully. I have to say, particularly as executive director of the authority, I was very worried about the risks. I came from bond underwritings. I understand bond underwriting. And I have to say that these bond issues are based on forecasted revenues that assume certain rent increases and so forth. But we got them done. We sold them to the bond market. I didn't, but the bond underwriters did. We work with Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and Stifel are the three bond underwriters that brought these issues to us. So overall, it's been very successful. I mean, a lot of local government employees live in our workforce housing now. And but unfortunately, there are two factors that put this out of the market, and that primarily interest rates. Interest rates are just too high to get these done right now. That and property values are so high. We can't acquire the product and restrict the rent to between 80 and 110%, 20% of area median income. The other thing that you should be aware of is that once we own this housing stock, and not unlike affordable housing, it goes off the tax roll. So we've taken a lot of other market rate properties that were generating property taxes off the roll. So that was a little sticky with some of the tax assessors in particular. But every project is locally approved and goes through a huge vetting process. They're almost all through cities. I don't think we've done a single project that was county sponsored. They're almost all city projects, but the counties are impacted because the projects go off the tax roll. Here's some pictures of some of them. This is Wood Creek and Pleasant Hill, $395 million project, 484 apartments. They were built in 1986, so the proceeds of our bonds also improved and brought the properties up to par. Just huge, 3 pools, playground, clubhouse, fitness center. The amenities at these projects are really, really phenomenal. This is Park Crossing in Fairfield, nice swimming pool there. 114 million in bonds were issued for 200 apartments. They were built in 2006, so they needed some improvements too. Vineyard Gardens in Santa Rosa. I wish I had a better picture of this. All you can see is the sign there, but 89 million in bonds. We purchased 180 apartments. They were built in 1987, so they needed a lot of improvements, but just all sorts of amenities. And so this is really good housing stock that is available for the workforce. Town at Glendale, this was the last issue that we did, 105 million, 126 apartments. And just a great, these are mostly Class A apartment buildings. So now this is another program of CSCDA where we issue tax exempt bonds. It's called, we established this in 2002, and this is really for single family development. So we're doing everything from the unhoused to low affordable housing to workforce housing to new single family developments throughout the state. And this is almost all developer driven, but to the extent that you know of a development in your county or city, let us know. We may be able to issue bonds for the infrastructure and help get that project off the ground. Takes local approval, not unlike PACE. I don't know if you're all familiar with PACE and how you have to opt in to allowing property assessed clean energy in your counties, but SCIP is the same. You simply adopt a resolution and allow us to issue bonds for the development impact fees for your communities. All of these developers have issued bonds through CSCDA. It's a robust program, and it takes an enormous amount of time for our board to go through the proceedings. We essentially take the proceedings out of city council meetings and board of supervisors meetings because they are laborious and they're rudimentary. They take a lot of time. So we do that on your behalf. We're also doing a lot of community facilities district and issuing special tax bonds, all for these big development projects. And I'll give you some examples here. This is a 3 Roots master plan community in the city of San Diego. 21 million in assessment revenue bonds were issued. We financed the city's development impact fees, and just an amazing project that is all green. That what they're doing in terms of solar and energy efficiency, using green space. This is an amazing project. I'm so happy that CSCDA can put their name on it. This is City of Lincoln, the Meadowwood Community Facilities District, 48 gross acres, 271 single family residences, and we're doing the infrastructure for this. City of Banning, this is a huge development in City of Banning, and we've issued many series of bonds, most recently 18.8 million. And the interest rate on the bonds was 3.4%. That's pretty darn good for non-rated bonds. There are 312 single family homes in this particular project, but the overall project is bigger. City of Antioch, we did the infrastructure for Sand Creek, if any of you are familiar with that. Open PACE. PACE has been a little controversial, especially residential PACE. And like any program, it went through great growing pains. CSCDA was an early participant in PACE, and we currently have 3 residential PACE providers: California First, Fortify, and Home Run Finance. But where we're really seeing a lot of traction is in commercial PACE. And what I'd love to see, but we haven't done yet, is a commercial PACE project for a residential apartment building. And the reason is the owners of the apartment buildings can't transfer the cost of the improvements to their tenants. So that's where law needs to change, we hope, because we'd like to see a lot of our apartment buildings become more and more green. So I want to give a shout out to our board. Tim Snellings from Butte County is currently the chair. Most of our board members are retired, but they're not all retired. Jordan Kaufman from Kern County is the treasure tax collector, Dan Mirzwa from Yuba County Treasure Tax, Brian Steger, who was previously with LA County and worked in the CSAC offices. He's now retired and he stayed on our board, thank God. Jim Erb from Kings County is our most recent addition. And we meet twice a month in order to have a regular schedule to approve issues. In order for the private sector to come to us, they want to know that their issues are going to be considered and approved. We don't put anything on the agenda unless it meets our policies. And so the meetings are pretty quick, but our board has to, get on the Zoom call twice a month at 2 p.m. on Thursday. So I really want to give them a shout out because it's a big commitment to get all of this done in California. Graham and Alan, thank you for your support. And then League of California Cities, Carolyn Coleman and Norman Coppinger. It really is a huge collaborative effort by our board and the league and CSAC. Our staff, James Hamill and John Penkower, are really the brains behind this. They're the legs on the ground. They're the people that show up to the council meetings and the board of supervisors meetings to get things approved. And they'd be here. They could probably answer questions better than I can because they really know this stuff inside and out. But you can learn more about all of this and all these resources at our website, which is cscda.org. And that's all I have. Enough?
Yeah. Thank you, Cathy. I always love your energy and your knowledge base. I've got a quick question for you. Regional housing needs assessment that comes to cities and counties from MPOs. What is the interaction or relationship between what you do and dealing with cities or counties and their RHNA numbers?
I don't know. What's regional what?
Regional housing needs assessment. It's a number that MPOs create and provide to cities and counties.
Oh.
An obligation to provide this certain types of housing.
I wish I could answer that question, but I think it's beyond my scope.
All right.
Really, we so much of what we do is if there's a need and if we can come up with a solution, we'll develop a solution for it, like workforce housing and PACE, quite frankly, and SKIP was one of those innovations. So maybe Graham can answer that question. Graham's taking the mic.
I think he's going to
give
give it a
You gonna
shot.
help me
I
here?
just want to hold the mic. The CSCDA comes in after. So the RHNA numbers are established for cities and counties in terms of those are, it's the amount of housing that needs to be planned and approved from a planning perspective by local government.
In those categories of
in specific
income,
categories.
yeah.
That's right. And then CSCDA's role would be more in the infrastructure part of that. So it's more on the implementation side as housing is going into your community. So not a part of the development of what the numbers are or the interaction and all the policy issues that we have with the state about how those numbers are derived because they're very controversial.
Yeah.
But rather coming in after those are established to help deliver it.
To help an agency meet those numbers.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's questions like that and getting an understanding of what you see and what we could possibly do is so
Well,
important.
yeah, and I think so because to Graham's point, and for county folks, and it's more cities than it is probably counties, but we're given those numbers, and that number has to go into each county's general plan housing element and update it. And the state will penalize you if you are not making progress towards those numbers. So you're a tool in their tool belt to get them started. Next, we have Ms. Valdivia to speak.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to let me participate virtually. So crossing my fingers, the technology is on my side today. I'd like to share a bit of a PowerPoint here to speak a little bit about who we are and what we do at California Volunteers Office of the Governor. We're led by our Chief Service Officer, Josh Friday, who has been in this role since 2019. And we administer service and volunteer initiatives throughout the state, including AmeriCorps programs. And it's all due in part because of Governor Gavin Newsom's bold vision and significant investments in service. We've been able to create new opportunities for Californians to serve. And, we are the largest state service commission in the country, with members serving over 1,000 locations across the state. We're currently supported by a bipartisan board of commissioners and currently have first partner Jennifer Siebel Newsom serve as our honorary chair. Our mission is to engage all Californians in service, volunteerism, and civic engagement to tackle our greatest challenges together. And a lot of you are probably thinking, why service? Why volunteerism? Well, we at California Volunteers believe that volunteering and participating in service program creates purpose and connection, as well as opportunities to advance careers. We all know California faces challenges from an indiscriminate climate crisis, vast food insecurity, growing inequality, to racial, social, and economic injustices. We've become too divided, and we've become disconnected and isolated one another, especially during the pandemic. And we're often too quick to look past our common humanity. And we know that service and volunteerism is a key part of tackling these challenges while building new connections and lifting up communities. Service has the power to unite us, create purpose, empower each of us, and ultimately help us live healthy and fulfilled lives. At California Volunteers, we believe every single Californian can make an impact because everybody can serve. And we'd like to, share with you how we think about Californians engaging in service. We think of it through a pyramid of civic engagement, is what we like to call it. Each level of the pyramid is critical, and all levels of this pyramid interact with one another in an additive way. At the top of the pyramid, you'll see that we have serve, and these are our fellowships, our members. These fellowships are committed terms of service in which fellows devote a length of time, generally a year, to help their community build capacity. Fellows gain critical work experience and also earn living stipends while doing that. Fellowships are at the top of the pyramid because they require the most time commitment. In the middle of the pyramid, you'll see volunteer. And this is where Californians can devote their time and talents meeting community needs through volunteering. For example, these are the folks who once a week will volunteer at a local food bank or tutor and mentor students a couple times a month. These roles are critical, as many organizations cannot accomplish their mission without the support of volunteers. At the bottom of the pyramid, you'll see take action. We know everyone has something important to contribute to our society, and at California Volunteers, we're equipping them with the tools and resources necessary to make a difference at home and in their own time. Meeting people where they are and with the time they have is a key component to creating a mindful and engaged California. Everybody can serve regardless of the amount of time they have, and we need everybody to serve if we're going to tackle these challenges together. And these actions, they don't happen in a vacuum. Fellows often recruit volunteers to support their host partner organizations, and volunteers help with education campaigns to empower Californians to make changes in their own lives. The only way we can create meaningful, lasting impact is if we work together. And we're especially excited to be here today to highlight a new program through which some of you are working with us already, and that's the Californians for All Youth Job Corps. Youth Job Corps is a brand new career development program with three main goals: to increase employment for underserved youth across California, to develop meaningful public service career pathways for young Californians, to enhance the capacity of local governments to address challenges in the key areas of climate action, COVID-19 recovery, and food insecurity. This program was funded in the 21-22 state budget with $185 million, which was allocated to California through the American Rescue Plan Act. $150 million of that funding was allocated to the 13 largest cities in the state, with funding amounts determined by population size. And to distribute the remaining $35 million, California Volunteers ran a competitive application process for municipalities with populations of less than 300,000. In total, we're partnering with 27 cities, counties, and municipalities throughout California to launch this statewide effort. And this program is unique for many reasons. While California Volunteers, from a statewide perspective, is working to make key impacts in three issue areas of climate, COVID-19 recovery, and food insecurity, each city or county has the flexibility to design their jobs and pathways that align with their own community priorities. Working in partnership like this allows us to collectively meet our goals. And we know that many young Californians do not have the same access to the tools and resources needed to find meaningful jobs. With Youth Job Corps, we're being intentional about hiring youth aged 16 to 30 who have not participated in an AmeriCorps program before, are low income, unemployed, or in or out of school, justice involved in or transitioning from foster care, or engaged with mental or substance abuse systems. We're really focusing on creating public service career pathways to show our young people they will make an impact and are the next generation of civic leaders. Youth will also be supported with a minimum $15 an hour wage, and in many places more than $15, as well as essential wraparound services like transportation stipends, case management, resume preparation, special job training, and other benefits to help ensure both their short and long-term success. We are very excited to continue our work to bring employment opportunities and career pathways to underserved youth, and it's our sincere hope to grow this program to include other municipalities. As you can see, we currently have this program in the 13 largest cities and then other municipalities, including some counties as well. And again, we're really hoping that we're able to expand this program in the next couple of years. Another program we're here to highlight today is College Corps, which the Californians for All College Corps is a first of its kind state service and career development program that provides students with financial support and professional experience, while engaging them in meaningful community action around education, climate, and food insecurity. Californians for All College Corps is a partnership between the state, public, and private universities to allow students to earn up to $10,000 for committing to serve their community for an academic year. This specifically fills the financial gap for Pell Grant recipients, so we did that intentionally. This program will engage up to 6,500 students over the next 2 years. And just to give you a sense of scale, that's roughly the size of the entire Peace Corps. Students will serve 450 hours with community host partners over the course of an academic year, which will equal about 15 hours a week, so they can also focus on their studies while they're participating in this program. And at California Volunteers, we like to think of this as a win-win-win. It's a win for the student who will graduate with less debt while gaining valuable work experience and professional networks. It's a win for the community who will benefit from the meaningful service of these students. And it's a win for our broader society when we graduate a new generation of leaders in California who have learned to work with people of different backgrounds and perspectives to solve problems. We know many college students struggle to pay their tuition while also worrying about housing, books, food, and basic costs of living. With College Corps, students won't have to choose between their passion and a paycheck, and we're helping them pave a career path. And we know this is more than just about money. As we face historic crises, an unprecedented climate crisis, education equity, and the uphill battle towards a full COVID-19 recovery, our young people are looking for ways to step up and make a change. They're knocking down on our doors, and we're here willing to make the opportunities to help them do that change. We're also opening the doors for a population too often excluded for no good reason, and that's our dreamers. For the first time, we're able to offer a state-funded service opportunity to AB 540 California Dream Act students, so we're super excited and super proud of that fact. We're partnering with nearly 50 campuses ranging from UCs, CSUs, and community colleges, and we're really excited to look into the future and see how we can expand more. With these two programs, we're focusing on being intentional for creating opportunities for California's young people, whether they continue their education or begin their employment journey. It's our sincerest hope that through our programs, we're able to empower young people not to be civic-minded leaders, not just tomorrow, but today. And really, we know that these programs will be successful only if we work together, which is why we want to partner together. Our goal is to build as many service opportunities as possible across the state, and we all benefit when our young people are engaged and ready to tackle these issues. So please, we're making the plea to partner with you, whether it's seeking or finding volunteer opportunities, whether it's promoting different programs that we already have through social media or our newsletters, but really just want to invite you all to work with us on these different opportunities. And lastly, just want to share our different channels and forms of staying connected. We are very active on social media. So if your organization, your county is on social media, I would love to stay engaged that way, and just want to leave you with my email address so we can stay connected, and just really excited to see how else we can partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Very informative. Appreciate that. As you look ahead to the next couple of years, what types of opportunities will there be at the state and federal level to further expand on the progress that is being made with housing, childcare, and education and service programs to address county workforce needs? Any of our panelists like to take a stab at that? Yeah, Cathy.
It's interesting. Last night, I was with Broadband Ben. Do you all know Broadband Ben?
Yes.
Interesting guy. And I told him that I was going to talk about housing. And he's like this mad scientist. He has an avocado farm here, but he also is an architect, and he worked for NASA. I mean, he's just this brilliant man who is looking to build renewable houses out of rice field waste or something like that. I mean, he like these blocks, they look like Legos. And so what I see is that we need to make room for new innovations so that we can do.
Is that Ben? Oh no, that's not Ben.
We need to, and another thing that you all can do, and this guy also, I mean, the guy was so engaging. He owns a fourplex on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles. It was built in the 30s, and he and his brother inherited it from his parents, and they want to tear it down and build. He wants to build low-income housing, and the only way to maximize this little piece of property is to go up 7 stories. But you can't do that with multifamily houses. So what I realized is that City of Los Angeles needs to change its height restrictions for that particular property. So he can build, he said he could build 70 units. He could do 10 efficiency type units. And we need that so desperately. And he doesn't even care really what it costs. I mean, this guy wants to provide low income housing. And so I turn to you, local government officials. What can you do to encourage folks like Broadband Ben to bring these projects? So how can you sort of relax some of the restrictions without relaxing them too much? We still want them to be viable and safe, but that's what I see. I see that we really need to work together, particularly with individuals and developers and people of means who want to provide housing and can't because of building restrictions.
So you just flipped the script on us. You're asking the question of county supervisors and staff, right?
I mean, isn't that what you do?
Anybody want to take a stab at answering Cathy's question? Yeah, go ahead.
And if I may add, working together is key right now. Like I said, we cannot work in silos. And for early education, there are funds at the state and federal level for facilities. So we need to work together to apply for those funds to be able to provide childcare in our community, both for our employees and for the workforce.
Yeah, we saw a great example of that in the previous panel, talking about a chamber working with First Five. I happen, me personally, have experience both with First Five, and I previously was on a chamber board in Temecula. And so I know what you can produce when you work together. So yeah, really underscore that. Let me ask you one more question here. Who are some of the key partners, including non-traditional partners, that counties should be looking to work with related to these important areas? Partners, who, yeah.
I did mention it earlier. So non-traditional is your childcare resource and referral. And like I said, even our high school districts, right, are some of our partners, and our local childcare planning councils. And I'm saying that on behalf of, childcare. So those are, and even our childcare providers, that's a whole group now, it's unionized. So they are definitely great advocates for your community.
Great. And Christina, were you trying to get a word in? I'm sorry.
No worries. I was just going to add that, we would love the opportunity, obviously, to expand our reach with other state agencies and departments. So always want to throw a bone to other departments and agencies throughout the administration. Really think that the partnership between local government and the state, can be very successful. So whether it's with California volunteers or other departments and agencies, encourage folks to reach out to state as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an important message to be reminding ourselves of these partnerships. But oftentimes it isn't a lack of desire, it's a lack of knowing who to reach out to, who to connect. And it's one of the great things I love about CSAC is it brings partners together so that we can network, we can get to know each other, exchange business cards, and talk about the programs, because I guarantee you everyone in this room is passionate and committed to just about everything they've heard today, right? We all want happier employees. We all want better workforce, better workplace. We want quality childcare. We want better housing, better jobs, better education, all of those things coming together. And that's why the folks are in this room that are here. Well, I'd like to lead you in a round of applause for our speakers. Yay. Thank you all. Well, in closing then, I'd like to, again, thank our hosts, San Luis Obispo County and County Supervisor Bruce Gibson, our second VP here at CSAC. As Graham mentioned last night, it's our first regional meeting in person in over 2 years. Yeah. So, I don't know about you, I had a great time last night. I learned a lot more than I ever knew about flying Army helicopters from a table mate. She was very interesting. And just networking with everyone and just the camaraderie that it was feeling. Because I could have just flown up this morning, but I would have missed last night. And so that was a special evening. I'd also like to thank CSAC and our CSAC team, led by our esteemed Executive Director, Graham Knaus, and our President, Ed Valenzuela. And I'd like to thank CSAC Finance Corporation. I was asked as a county supervisor, what am I looking into the future for? And I laid out what my own personal vision is as a county supervisor. But I'll tell you, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of county supervisors, and I said this and ruffled a few feathers with a friend who's very supportive of my military service, but I said the Navy made me the man I am, but it only prepared me to do this job of service as a county supervisor, where day in and day out, I feel like I'm impacting people's lives and making them better. And I think this is probably the most meaningful work I've done in my life, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. And in the last thank you, I want to give a shout out to Tami Douglas Schatz. I'm told by, yeah. It's been a very special, unique opportunity to be here, to be in San Luis Obispo, and in this particular building, and with all of you. So thank you all for being here, for coming. I bid you farewell and safe travels home to wherever that might be. Thank you.